Well, hello everybody. It's Romania Black, and I was talking to the moderators today, and they were like, "How are we already at the end of Volume One?" Right? We are ending Volume One of Scum Villain's self-saving system today. It's been 9 weeks with this story, but it feels like I just started yesterday. So I have a feeling this novel is going to go by very quickly because there's so much happening. There's so much hype. It's going to be very hard for me not to read ahead. I may have to read ahead for scheduling. So the comments may be sporadic as we move forward, and that's just how we'll have to do with it. There hasn't been as many comments with this series, I've noticed, as I've received for Heaven Official's Blessing. And then I feel like Modao Zushi was weird because I'd already finished the donghua at that point. So I feel like most people were commenting for Modao Zushi because I'd already finished the donghua, so I knew what was coming. So they were mainly just being like, yeah, so this added thing that you didn't know from the donghua and we just talked about there. So I feel like there were a lot of comments with Modao Zushi because there wasn't as much fear of spoilers. With Heaven Official's Blessing, I feel like there was a lot more hype for the series, but I also feel like that was riding on the coattails of the manhwa going on at the same time, as well as the donghua season 2 coming out, so people were getting back into the series. With this poor scum villain self-saving system, I feel like it's just the feral fandom. It's just like a little sect, and they're like, we're trying to get more people into this story. So I feel for the fandom, and I also feel like this is the one series that I am the most blind going into of MXTX's series. So I feel like not a lot of people are commenting because they don't want to accidentally spoil me, which I'm thankful for, but it just means I don't have as many comments to talk about in the intro, and that just is what it is. I feel like once we get further into the story, there'll be more opportunities to talk more about it, but I appreciate you all trying not to spoil me, so thank you. It's this weird dichotomy of wanting to talk more about the story, but also wanting to go in blind. It's a weird tightrope to go on, I will say that, but I do have a couple comments I want to talk about before we dive into this. I was told by the moderator, Be Happy, and Floor, that after this set of chapters, I can go back and rewatch the after credit scene of the donghua episode 10. So we're going to do that today. Whenever I'm done with this chapter set, we're looking at chapters 27 through 30, finishing up the book. Then I'll go back and see, because the abyss is here. We're here. We're going to get to see what that's like. And then Anime Annie we were talking about Shin Ching Cho's obliviousness and how that works in this story, which I honestly love it. I think it's hilarious. I feel a lot of Shin's obliviousness occasionally. But Anime Annie, we were talking about the differences in obliviousness for each of MXTX's protagonists. And this isn't really, it's soft spoilery. So when I'm done waving my hand, you can come back to this. But I am going to talk a little teensy bit about Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing. So real quick, we were talking about how Wei Wuxian's obliviousness in Modao Zushi with Lan Wangji is a lot about self-deprecation. Like Wei Wuxian's like, oh my God, Lan Wangji is this amazing and like superior being. I can't possibly compare, why would he possibly love me? What? And then once he finds out, he's like, oh, okay, cool, we're mutual, yay! And then it's a thing, right? But his is basically based on self-deprecation, his obliviousness. With Shilian's obliviousness is the most innocent. It's literally because he's been a cultivator and he's been abstinent, and his cultivation has required him to not even tap into his sexuality, so he's not even been thinking about it. He's not educated about it. He doesn't really understand it. So it's just kind of like a lack of self-awareness. And then Hua Chong doesn't really flirt with him too much because he's very self-loathing and doesn't believe he's worthy of his gege. So it's kind of coming at it from both fronts. And then once they both realize, oh wait, you actually like me, I actually like you, okay, we're good. It kind of ends the same way as Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji's does. But end of those spoilers. And then so with this series, Shin Ching Cho's obliviousness seems kind of tied to him being, as Anime Annie put it, an otaku that's so obsessed with self-preservation at this point that he's kind of overlooking how the story is obviously changing and the obvious storyline differences with Lo Binghe that's happening as well. So it's like, he's not privy on it yet. He's not picked up yet. Do I think he's going to pick up on it? Oh yeah, I think he is. And then I think he's going to go, oh, and then hopefully the two of them end up in the same boat as Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian and Shili and Hua Chong. It's just coming at it from a different way. And I kind of like that. So I think that's really important to note. But yeah, the thing I was talking with the moderators about today is with Scum Villain self-saving system, which I'll actually get to read the backside of this after we're done, which is exciting, and look through the glossary and all that fun stuff. Gonna be a fun time. But I think the thing about it is, with Modao Zushi, when I got to the novel and audio drama, I didn't feel like I was going in blind. I felt like I was going in anticipating there were going to be bits and pieces of the story that were maybe different or more explained or added on to, but there wasn't necessarily a sense of, oh, I'm going to be completely floored, right? With Heaven Official's Blessing, I was telling the moderators, surprisingly, Heaven Official's Blessing sets up everything from you in Volume 1. Volume 1 sets up everything. And some people were trying to tell me that throughout the story, which I was like, don't spoil. But they were trying to hint at that. They were like, well, if you go back to Volume 1. And I was like, la, 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 la. But they were right. Yeah, it literally, Volume 1 sets up all the characters for the most part. It sets up the main story. If you go back, it all comes full circle. It's just like, yeah, it's all there. Whereas this series, I have no clue. With this series, it's like, oh, there's Mobe Jun. We've never heard of him. There is Shang Qinghua. Never heard of him. And these characters just come out of the woodwork and you're like, where have they been? And then Shin Cho's like, oh yeah, there's that character that shows up 500 chapters from now. And you're like, what? There's been no preface or setup because Shin Cho hasn't seen the need to tell us, the audience, about that. And we talked about it last week. He's becoming more and more of an unreliable narrator. And so I'm like, oh, are characters just going to pop up that we will have no prior knowledge to? And then Shin Cho will be like, oh crap, there they are. And I'm like, what? So that kind of adds to the blindness going into no man's land, which is where we are now, because I have no clue what to expect. We know the bare framework of the OG story and what happens with Luo Binghe and Shin Cho, but that's it. We know the very end of the bad version, but we know that that's already changing. So I'm literally about to like dive off a diving board into Volume 2, which will be a sea of mystery. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm ready. Because at least with Heaven Official's Blessing, and again, some spoilers to Heaven Official's Blessing, I realized that I'm going to put a tag by that volume part because that was probably spoilery. But, with Heaven Official's Blessing, there had been hints that we were going to get to flashback because the flashbacks were sort of happening. They were hinted at early on. So when the flashbacks happen in the main story, you're like, okay, I was expecting this. I expected we would go back to the beginning and tie this back around. With this, I have no clue where we're going. I've jumped in a car. I know we're going down a road. I kind of know where we're supposed to end up at, but now I don't know where we're going. So, and I feel you all at home are like, like little feral goblins coming out of the woodwork being like, Romania has no idea. And I'm like, no, you're like Mang Mo. You're like, she has no clue. Sound like the English dub of The Magician from Unico Island of Magic. No clue! Shin Cho. Oh my God. But yes, so I sat down this morning and I'm like, I'm so ready to finish this first volume and see what we get, especially with the Abyss, and to see what ends up happening. So that's exciting. But I want to thank you all for the support and kindness. I really, really appreciate it as we go into this next volume. But we're not going to waste any time. We're going to do chapters 27, 28, 29, and 30, pages 244 to 291 in the book, which is a big old chunk, and then pages 196 to 234 in the online version. Thank you again, Reiki, for getting me this version, and so we're going to jump into it from there. But I hope you all enjoy. We're going to dive in and start Scum Villain Self-Saving System, chapters 27 through 30, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. After completing his task, he turned right around and left. This NPC was really so straight to the point, not a moment spared. Oh! Completely in line with his modus operandi in the original work. He'd show up wherever Luo Binghe needed him without rhyme or reason. His actions were just that, forced, a total maverick needing not a shred of logic. Oh, so he literally just showed up fought Binghe, removed the seal, and was like, okay, problem solved. Bye. Speaking of forced, that could only be how Shin Chingcho would face his next task. The last level. Ooh. I don't like how it's called the last level. It feels like the last level of their happy relationship. Having fought a harsh battle, Lo Binghe was half kneeling in the midst of a ruined landscape. His eyes vacant, but it looked like his placid veneer would at any moment tear. Right now, his mind was like a dormant volcano. One that had suddenly erupted after being silent for many years. Yeah, with the demon blood coming up. The magma in its veins starting to flow. Just thinking about this made Shin Chingcho feel like he was burning up along with it, until his bones and head began to ache and pound. The system sent a shrill notification, the likes of which he'd never heard before. Warning! The critical quest, the endless abyss, and endless hatred, a sky filled with crystal frost and tears of blood, has officially begun. If it is not successfully completed, 20,000 protagonist satisfaction points will be deducted. Was it Shin Chingcho's imagination, or were the quest names getting more and more absurd every time, to the point that Shin Chingcho didn't even know where to begin roasting them? And hey, when I was confirmed with you a while back, wasn't it 10,000? It's been like 5 minutes, and now it's doubled? Yeah, the idea of the endless abyss and endless hatred. A sky filled with crystal frost and tears of blood. Well, the crystal frost would be from Mobejun, right? And his ability. And then tears of blood, I'm assuming, is from Lo Binghe. But endless hatred. Let's back up a second. Let's back away from that. Swaying, Shin Chingcho walked over to Lo Binghe, who was still in a half-crazed state. He unleashed a couple of palm strikes on his back, channeling some of his own remaining spiritual energy into his student's body. You think it's going to be that easy, dream on. Not only did Lo Binghe fail to regain consciousness, the demonic chi within his body rebounded Shin Chingcho's efforts, forcing Shin Chingcho to cough up the mouthful of blood he'd been holding back for so long. Only at this moment did Lo Binghe finally recover some awareness. I wonder if Lo Binghe and releasing this demonic blood inside of him is going to make him accidentally attack Shin Chingcho, and Shin Chingcho defending himself is going to cause Lo Binghe to go off into the abyss. We'll see where that goes. He slowly pulled himself out of his muddled state and managed to piece together a couple of mangled words. That familiar face also gradually came into focus. Shin Chingcho saw Lo Binghe's gaze clear a bit and let out a sigh of relief. He wiped at the blood by his mouth and asked in an even tone, "You're awake?" After a pause, "If you're awake, let's have a thorough discussion. Lo Binghe, tell me honestly, exactly how long have you been practicing demonic cultivation?" As soon as he said this, it was as if Lo Binghe had been plunged from the stifling upper heavens into a bone-chilling pool. It would have been impossible for him not to return to complete consciousness. He stared at Shin Chingcho's wintry face, and his heart sank straight down. In the past, Shin Chingcho had always called him Binghe. He had never been addressed by his full name. And Shin Chingcho is doing this because he has to, right? "Shizun," he said quietly, "this disciple can explain." Though Lo Binghe was still a youth, he'd always remained calm and unperturbed, often acting mature beyond his years. Now actual panic surfaced on his face, like he was frantic to explain, but he didn't know where to start. Seeing the oh-so-mighty male lead reduced to this state, Shin Chingcho couldn't stand to watch anymore. He burst out to cut him off. "Silence!" His voice had only just left his mouth, and he already felt like he hadn't properly controlled himself, that his tone had been overly harsh. He seemed to have scared Lo Binghe. The boy stared at him blankly with pitch-black eyes like a child who'd been slapped, muddled and confused, and indeed he obediently went silent. "When did you start?" Shin Chingcho stiffly recited the line, unable to harden his heart enough to look his student in the eyes. 2 years ago. Shin Chingcho went silent and didn't speak. To answer his question so quickly and so honestly to boot, it seemed that Lo Binghe was really scared witless. Unbeknownst to him, Lo Binghe automatically took this silence to mean, "Is that so? You wicked disciple, you managed to hide this from me for so long." Which isn't what he means! The damn fog of misunderstanding! 2 years, Shin Chingcho said quietly. No wonder you were able to progress by leaps and bounds and to such an extent. You truly live up to your reputation, Lo Binghe. You are gifted with spectacular talent. In truth, these words he spoke were purely an expression of the regrets within his heart. As the male lead, Lo Binghe was indeed blessed with spectacular talent. If Shin Chingcho had to describe what he was feeling with absolute honesty, it was admiration with the tiniest bit of envy. But to Lo Binghe's ears, his meaning was completely different. He instantly fell to his knees before Shin Chingcho. Shin Chingcho's soul almost left his body. If a man kneeling was worth his weight in gold, the male lead kneeling was worth your life. Letting him kneel at this critical juncture, when Lo Binghe remembered it in the future, wouldn't his heart hatred be compounded? Well, get up! Shin Chingcho waved his sleeve at once. Hit by the gust from this wave, Lo Binghe couldn't help but stand again and back up a few steps, even more stunned out of his senses. Had he done something wrong? Something so wrong that it couldn't be absolved? That he didn't even have the right to kneel and plead Shizun for forgiveness? But Shizun, you said before that just as people can be good or bad, demons can be good or evil, he mumbled. That in this world there is no one intolerable to the heavens. I said that? Oh my God! It had been many years. Shin Chingcho thought intently for a while. It seemed like he really had said that. Shin Chingcho! How could you forget something that big? How? But that had been then, when he'd been considering a far-off future. This was now, in the midst of a crisis with a blade suspended above his throat. This was a last resort, but would it be too shameless to slap his own face by doubling down? Oh no! Oh my God! Oh, Shin Chingcho, where are we going with this? You are no simple demon, Shin Chingcho said. That mark on your forehead is a mark of sin, the mark of the demons who fell from the heavens. These demons have murdered countless humans, and moreover, their temperaments are impossible to contain. From ancient times, they've been the cause of calamity upon calamity. Under no circumstances can they be spoken of in the same breath as other demons. I cannot wait and hope my earlier words were true while you develop a taste for slaughter and lose all control. As these words touched his ears, Lo Binghe's hopes shattered and the rims of his eyes reddened. His voice quivered. But you said... I've said a lot of things, okay? I even once made several hundred posts in bright red font about wanting to castrate Shin Chingcho. It wasn't the least bit funny. Shin Chingcho, who'd always been so good at mental gymnastics, reached a new high in his number of mental roasts, madly smashing through his old records, and yet he still couldn't put himself at ease. And instead he only grew more tired and worn out. He relentlessly told himself to the point of auto-brainwashing. The suffering and torment Lo Binghe endured now was all necessary in order for him to stand above the masses in the future. Without enduring the bone-chilling cold, how could a fragrant plum blossom hope to bloom? Without 3 years training in the realms below, how could a demon king over the worlds loom? Oh, so is he going to be down in the abyss for 3 years? Shinmo in hand, he would possess everything beneath the heavens. With a harem innumerable, he need not be an incel. But it was useless. It was completely useless. Nothing could lift his spirits. Shin Chingcho raised his head and formed a sword seal to summon Zhu Ya, and he held it within his hands. The hand wielding the sword shook slightly, thin veins surfacing through his skin. Shizun, do you really want to kill me? Lo Binghe couldn't believe it. I don't want to kill you. Unable to look at his expression, Shin Chingcho's gaze went right through him. Lo Binghe searched his memory, but he had never seen Shin Chingcho so cold and motionless, not toward him. Even back when he just entered Sangshong Mountain Sect, when Shizun had disliked him, his eyes had never been this empty, like he was looking at nothing. His gaze held not even a trace of warmth. It was exactly the way he'd looked at heinous demons whom he'd executed with that same sword. It's only what that man said wasn't wrong, said Shin Chingcho. The human realm is no longer a place for you. You ought to return to the place you belong. No, no. He stepped forward and Lo Binghe stepped back. Shin Chingsho pressed him backward until they were right on the edge of the endless abyss. If one looked into the ravine, they would see the simmering demonic chi roiling unceasingly within it, and they would hear the anguished wailing of tens of thousands of spirits. Hundreds and thousands of deformed arms reached up from the cracks towards the human realm, hungering for fresh blood and flesh. The deeper regions faded into the black fog and eerie scarlet light. Will you go down yourself, or must I force you? Shin Chingsho asked, Shu Ya pointing towards the abyss. He selfishly hoped that Lo Binghe would go of his own volition. In this kind of scenario, characters who chose to jump from cliffs were always caught on something, and then Shin Chingsho could go on believing his own lies that this scene would have a happy end. Better that than this moment being carved into Chingsho's memory from here on out, forcing him to remember night and day that he shoved Lo Binghe down with his own 2 hands. But Lo Binghe refused to give up hope. He refused to believe that the teacher who'd been so kind to him would actually hurt him. He refused to believe that all those years of companionship every morning to night, could lead to this conclusion. Even as Zhu Ya stabbed into his chest, he clung to a last strand of hope. Oh no! Shin Chingsho hadn't meant to stab him. He really hadn't. He was only steeling himself, waving his sword around in order to scare Lo Binghe. No! If only Lo Binghe had stepped back once more to avoid his swing, he would have naturally fallen in. Shin Chingsho had never predicted that Lo Binghe would simply stand there, silently stand there, taking the blade head on. It was all over. In the original work, Lo Binghe was only kicked into the abyss. Now there was this extra stab to add to his grudge. Lo Binghe lifted his hand to grip the blade, but he didn't use any of his strength and only lightly held it. If Shin Chingsho decided to exert force, Shu Ya would continue to stab into him until it pierced straight through his chest. Lo Binghe's throat lightly bobbed. He said not a single word. The blade point clearly hadn't pierced his heart, yet Shin Chingsho felt like he could feel the heart's pained thumps traveling up the blade and into his hand, spreading through his entire arm until they arrived directly at his own heart. Suddenly, Shin Chingsho withdrew the sword. With that action, Lo Binghe's body swayed a little, but he quickly steadied himself. Realizing Shin Chingsho hadn't dealt him a killing blow, his eyes, which had almost dimly fainted, shone once more, like sparks struggling within burnt ashes. The corner of his mouth also managed to twitch. Perhaps he was trying to smile. Then, Shin Chingsho unleashed a final strike, which extinguished the last trace of light within Lo Binghe's eyes. He knew he would never forget Lo Binghe's expression from the moment of his fall. Oh! Oh! No! No! Oh, why? Why is it so hard? Why? Scum villain self-saving system! How can this lead to a happy ending for Shin Chingsho? How? How can any of this lead to a happy ending? No! How? How is Lo Binghe gonna interpret this in any other way? I'm so sad! I want to cry, but we have so much left to read. No. I'm not even done with this first chapter. By the time the sect leaders... And it's just over! Ah! Damn it. By the time the sect leaders and other cultivators arrived, having finished clearing out the demons within Judy Gorge, the spatial rift caused by the endless abyss had long since closed. Other than Shang Qinghua, who was playing dead, Shin Chingsho had stabilized the injuries of everyone who'd passed out. But he hadn't really paid attention to his own. His robe splattered with blood, his face expressionless and stark white, he looked quite wretched. Yu Qingyang stepped forward to check Shen Qingshou's pulse and condition and then frowned and asked Mu Qingfang as the expert to examine him. The cultivators of each sect picked out their disciples from among the bodies scattered across the ground, then whisked them away for further treatment. Liu Qingge sensed they were short one person. Then he realized it was the person who was always flitting around Shen Qingshou, impossible to miss. "Where's that disciple of yours?" he asked. Head lowered, Shen Qingshou didn't answer. He picked up the shattered pieces of a long sword lying on the ground, which had broken into many fragments. Qi Jingpeek's disciples had hurried to the scene. The sharp-eyed Mingfan, who'd been leading them, looked at the sword and stammered, "Shizun, that sword can't be." Mingfan had yearned for the Zhejiang sword on Wanjiang Peak, and he had spent many years thinking about it. After Lo Binghe had claimed it, his entire body had burned with envy, and for many nights he'd cursed while tossing and turning. He definitely couldn't mistake it. Ning Ying let out a sudden wail. "Oh, Shizun, don't scare me! Is that Alo's sword? Zhongyang, it can't be, right? It can't be!" A wave of whispers flowed around them. Zhongyang. They're talking about Peak Lord Shen's beloved disciple, Lo Binghe. A sword shares his existence with his master. If the sword is broken, then where is he? Could he have... Someone sighed. If this is really what happened, that's truly a great pity. In the midst of all this, Lo Binghe had become the Immortal Alliance Conference's top ranker. Heaven envies talent. Heaven envies talent. There were those who sighed in pity, those who were stunned, so he did win the bet, those who were sorrowful, and those who rejoiced in the misfortune of others. Ning Ying burst into wailing tears on the spot. Though Mingfan hated Lo Binghe and was always cursing him at him to go die, he'd never really wanted him dead. Moreover, when he thought about how much Shizun had adored him, and how this shitty brat had died without even leaving a corpse, Shizun had to be terribly sad, and Mingfan couldn't be happy about that either. Gloom and anxiety fell over the entirety of Xi Jinping's delegation. Zhan Shu Peak's group of women, with Qi Qingqi as their head, were also deeply moved. Liu Qingge wasn't good with words. He patted Shen Qingshou's shoulder. "Your disciple is gone, but you can still accept more." Though he knew Liu Qingge was trying to comfort him, Shen Qingshou still wanted to feebly roll his eyes at him. People who hadn't kicked their favorite disciple, who was also the male lead, into the endless abyss, were also just commentating from the sidelines. Whatever. What's done is done. Qi Jingpeek's disciple Lo Binghe, Shen Qingshou said slowly, fell to the demons and perished. This was the saddest chapter of any MXTX story I might have read in a long time. No. I really thought there was going to be something keeping Shen Qingshou from doing it. We're going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it in the discussion, but system, what we doing? How? What are we doing? I want to cry. This is so sad. At least with, like, all the bad stuff that happens with the other characters, they're all, like, side characters, so you're like, okay. And even with the stuff that happens with the protagonist, it's like, it's not the love interest's fault. So you're just like, oh, it'll be great. The love interest, bad stuff may be happening to them, but they've got each other. Here they don't have each other. They're, like, Shen Qingshou's the one that caused him to fall. MXTX, what are we doing? Chapter 28. That year's Immortal Alliance Conference was a greater disaster than nearly any since its inception. Over 1,000 new talents from every sect had participated in the conference. Of the 4 great sects, the members of Zhao Hua Monastery, who'd focused on supporting the barrier spell, had luckily been spared, while Huan Hua Palace had suffered the greatest losses, to the tune of nearly 100 participants. Sangzhong Mountain had taken the least damage, with only 30 or so injured. The newcomers, with low skill and meager cultivation, largely hailed from the other assorted sects and clans. This was the group that had been hit the hardest and taken the most casualties. Getting your name on the golden scribe tablet should have been a joyous occasion, but this year many of the people listed on the tablet had perished in Judy Gorge. The most heartbreaking of all was the first ranked name, high at the top of the list, a member of Sangzhong Mountain's Qi Jingpeek and Shin Qingqiu's beloved disciple, Lo Binghe, deceased, his sword broken. This was to say nothing of the casualties among the cultivators who had joined the fray to give aid during the incident. In this battle, each sect had suffered major losses. A red ranking chart was delivered to Qi Jingpeek. Lo Binghe was written high at the top in first place, glittering in gold. Ming Fan walked in to report, Shizun, 10,000 spirit stones were delivered. What should be done with them? 10,000 spirit stones? Shin Qingqiu stared at him blankly. Why would they suddenly send so many spirit stones up the mountain? Shizun, have you forgotten? Ming Fan asked carefully. At the Immortal Alliance conference, you bet 5,000. Now Shin Qingqiu remembered. It was the bet he had placed on Lo Binghe. Qingyong had said that any losses would be his to pay, while Shin Qingqiu could keep any winnings for himself. Sure enough, Lo Binghe had made a good showing, and in the final hour he had shot past the first and second ranked Gong Yi Zhao and Liu Mingyan to perch at the head of the rankings, thereby earning his master double his initial investment. I like that that was the case, but like, when did it happen? Like, when did he fight all those monsters? I guess it was the spiders. I guess it was just the spiders that he killed and they doubled the points. That's the only thing I can think of. Or did he get points for fighting Mo Beijun? At the time, Shin Qingqiu had thought that profit was profit, and they might as well receive a consolation prize, but now he was at a bit of a loss. In the past, he'd always given these things to Lo Binghe to handle, where the gift should be saved or whether it should be traded for something else, and if so, how to do so. He'd never had to worry about such things himself. Now Ming Fan was asking him what to do. Shin Qingqiu thought for a while and said, put them away for now. Ming Fan was silent. He actually wanted to ask for more instruction, like, well, where should I put it? But his master's face really didn't look too good, so he was afraid to press for answers. He thought, it should be fine if I put them where Lo Binghe used to put things, and immediately withdrew. For many days, Qi Jingpeek's disciples walked on eggshells, doing their best to avoid the elephant in the room, afraid of touching their master's sore spot. They all thought that after a few days, things would eventually take a turn for the better. Then, after half a month had passed and Shin Qingqiu seemed to gradually be returning normal, one day, right before mealtime, they suddenly heard Shin Qingqiu call Lo Binghe's name a few times from the bamboo house. With a thud, 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 Ning Yinging burst inside, giving Qingqiu a scare. What are you doing? He asked, charging in here so suddenly. It's unsightly for a lady to act so rough and undisciplined. Ning Yinging's eyes were red, like that of a little bunny's. Shizun, whatever you want to eat, I'll make it for you. Shin Qingqiu coughed. No need, go out and play. Was he calling his name in his sleep? Or, well, Shizun! Ning Yinging stamped her foot. Even if Alo is gone, you have to rest. You have the rest of your disciples. You're so out of your mind with grief. We disciples are worried to death. Shin Qingqiu would never have expected someone to use the words out of your mind to describe him. Actually, now that he'd reached the core formation stage, it didn't matter whether he ate or not. He just had a sudden craving and wanted to eat some snacks, and he had for a moment forgotten that he'd already thrown Lo Binghe into the endless abyss, so how did that count as being out of his mind? Shin Qingqiu opened his mouth, 100 words of protest ready to spill forth, but seeing Ning Yinging nearly about to cry from anxiety, he hurriedly went to comfort her instead. Only after he swore solemnly that his calls just now had been a mere slip of the tongue did she calm down. After coaxing her back outside, Shin Qingqiu let out a long sigh. He suddenly felt that this little miss, who in the original novel had always been pampered and childish, only capable of getting in trouble and being a burden, had in fact grown up quite a bit. After all, she was one of Lo Binghe's harem. She was the one who was supposed to be clawing at the ground, wailing to the heavens, but instead she'd come to comfort her master. Had his instruction actually had some effect? Either way, things couldn't go on like this any longer. Clearly, Shin Qingqiu was the one who'd raised that little lamb of a protagonist, so why did it seem like the protagonist had been the one looking after him? He was scaring his disciples, putting on the act of a grieving widow whose husband had just died. Hadn't it been only a couple days since he'd last seen that child? No, bah! Shin Qingqiu mentally slapped himself. Who are you calling a grieving widow? Whose husband died? That's not something you should just say. You're really getting worse by the day. A negative mindset produces nothing good. You deserve a slap. But perhaps because Lo Binghe had left, he really was a bit lonely. Especially when he thought about how 5 years from now, when they reunited, a relationship that had once been out that of a compassionate teacher and his filial disciple or something would become defiled by veiled murderous intent and daggers hidden within smiles. Shin Qingqiu had brought the broken pieces of Zhang Yong back with him. He'd messily dug a hole behind Xi Jinping's bamboo house, erected a tablet, and set up a sword mound. When others saw him lost in thought as he faced that empty tablet, they thought he was reminiscing about his beloved disciple, and they could only sigh. What a deep master and disciple bond. Fate toys with us all. Only Shin Qingqiu knew that the one he was mourning was in truth within that sword mound, buried underneath and never to return. The youth as warm as the sun. What truly broke him and caused him to weep at the heavens was that after several days of silence, the system sent him a message truly devoid of all humanity. Congratulations! You have successfully completed the key quest. The legend begins. Lo Binghe's fall and rebirth. Reward, protagonist satisfaction points, plus 10,000. Before Shin Qingqiu even had the chance to be pleased, it continued. However, due to extraordinary circumstances, a new point value has been activated. Lo Binghe's heartbreak points. Due to excessively high heartbreak level, the protagonist satisfaction points have been reset to 0. Please continue to work hard. Reset to 0. Reset to 0. Reset to 0. Those 3 large words looped endlessly within Shin Qingqiu's mind. What the hell are these heartbreak points? Didn't I tell you not to randomly activate strange point values? Fuck off! So Lo Binghe really is your darling son. Even his heartbreak gets a point value system of its own? Years of slaving away at the system's every command, and he was back to square one in a single night. Being a villain was a true misery. Grievances enough to fill the ocean. Oh my God. Oh my God. Being so unhappy. Naturally, Shin Qingqiu had to go take it out on someone else, so he had Ming Fong deliver a message inviting Shang Qinghua to the bamboo house. Shang Qinghua placed down the porcelain tea bowl and smiled. Oh, Xinjiang's Qijing Peak is truly elegant and secluded. Even this mere tea bowl is exquisite. Such sophistication truly makes Qinghua feel ashamed. He sounds like a car salesman. Qijing Peak and Anding Peak had always minded their respective business. Shin Qingqiu was reserved and aloof and very rarely took the initiative to invite guests, but this time he actually sent a disciple to Anding Peak with an invitation. Shang Qinghua was unable to discern what he wanted, but no one slaps a smiling face, so he started out with the compliments. At least that couldn't be a misstep. Shin Qingqiu dismissed the disciples, closed the door, and sighed. Shidi, with these words of yours, everything I see begins to bring up old memories. Every plank, every dish in this Qijing bamboo house was personally arranged by that disciple of mine. Shang Qinghua said nothing but sighed along with him. Ah, Lo Shizi was a heroic youth, such a pity. Those demons brought such a disaster upon us. They truly are hateful. The world mourns with us. Shin Qizhong, my condolences. If Shang Shidi truly felt it was a pity, this tragedy would not have occurred, Shin Qingqiu said faintly. At this, Shang Qinghua stiffened. After a moment, he seamlessly smoothed things over with a smile. What does Shin Qingqiu mean by that? Is he rebuking our Anding Peak for inadequate administration? Oh, if so, Shidi should truly apologize. Shin Qingqiu refilled his teacup. How was it inadequate? You clearly overexerted yourself. You even found demonic creatures like the ghost-headed spiders, Nanyan Shan, and bone eagles, none of which would ever enter the human realm of their own volition. How could Xizhang rebuke you for inadequacy? Oh, Peak Lord Shin, to make such outrageous accusations! Shang Qinghua shot to his feet, his face rapidly changing colors. Shin Qingqiu put his hand on Shang Qinghua's shoulder. Why is Shang Shidi getting so excited? He asked solemnly. Let's sit down and talk. Let me say something. Do you dare respond? Why wouldn't I? I have a clear conscience. Why would I fear a false accusation? With a sneer, Shang Qinghong brushed away his hand. Airplane shooting towards the sky? Asked Shin Ching-cho. In that instant, it was like a bolt of lightning from the heavens had struck Shang Qinghua in the head, rendering him unable to speak. After a long time, he managed to stammer out, "You! How do you know my ID?" What? What? In that moment, it was like Shin Ching-cho had also been burnt to a crisp by the aforementioned bolt of lightning. He'd only wanted to study Shang Qinghua's reaction to this name to determine if he had also read Proud Immortal Demon Wei, but given his reaction, he wasn't just a reader, was he? Oh my god! After 3 long seconds, Shin Ching-cho jumped on him. "It's you! How could I not know your ID after reading your entire fucking novel? If you hadn't let something slip when Mobe Jun appeared, I really never would have known what hole you really crawled out of, great master!" What? What is happening? What? Excuse me? Excuse me? The moment. Chapter 5, Bai Lu. The moment that Shang Qinghua had seen Mobe Jun suddenly appear, he had accidentally let out a "what the fuck?" At the same time, Shin Ching-cho hadn't heard him particularly clearly, so he hadn't paid it any mind, but afterward, the more he thought about it, the more suspicious he'd grown. As the one who'd masterminded the event, or the logistics of it, Shang Qinghua was the subject to the irresistible pressure of the plot. Yet he hadn't released the Black Moon Rhinoceros python that should have starred in the numerous scenes. This was suspicious in itself, but if you considered the possibility that he had failed to do this intentionally in order to hinder the development of the plot, to sever the tragedy of Lo Binghei's fall into the endless abyss at its roots, it made sense. The two stared at each other speechless, competing for the most stunned. "Digging plot holes and not filling them," Shin Ching-cho finally burst out. "Foreshadowing gone to waste. Landmines all over the place. The writing style of an elementary schooler. If you're going to write a stallion novel, then write a proper stallion novel. Don't fool around writing, wump." "I'm also a victim here," Shang Qinghua said slowly. "At the end of the day, I'm still the author. Even if I didn't transmigrate into the protagonist, oh my god! I should at least have transmigrated into the role of a system in itself, right? But all of a sudden, I try to plug in a cord, I get electrocuted, and the system assigns me a character at random, and I end up cannon fodder." Oh! Oh! What? Well, still better than me, Shin Ching-cho sneered. "After you're exposed as a spy, Mobe Jun kills you outright to silence you. At least it's a straightforward death. Do you remember the state that I'll be in after I get carved up by Lo Binghei?" "Well, you only transmigrated here how many years ago?" Shang Qinghua countered. "Right upon rebirth, you already had the rank of a great master, right? I transmigrated into an infant. A childhood where I was destitute and miserable, and years of disrespected outer disciple. Have you really gone through more than I have?" This competition had no winner because in the end, it was 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Shang Qinghua sighed. "I've actually met a reader. Must be fate, must be fate. One of the 4 joys in life is meeting an old friend in a foreign place. What was your Zongdian ID? Maybe we were old acquaintances." "Peerless cucumber," said Shin Ching-cho. Shang Qinghua thought for a while. "I vaguely remember you. Weren't you especially vicious in one of those threads that was demanding I castrate the villain? It was when when the original Shin Ching-cho wanted to do Chu Ying Ning Ying Ying." At first, Shin Ching-cho empathetically said nothing. "I refuse to believe you only remember that one thing. Don't dwell on the past." More importantly, he had a resolution. "Enough blathering. I wanted to have a real discussion with you today, because after the Immortal Alliance conference, I suddenly had an idea. Perhaps it can solve our shared problem." Shang Qinghua froze. "For real?" "Oh my god! What? I... Off the rails! We're off off the rails. We're not even on a train track anymore. We're shooting in an airplane towards the sky. Oh my God! And we're only on chapter 29. Chapter 29. You think joking about something like this is funny? Shin Qingqiu asked. I'm talking about a guaranteed fix. As long as we keep it absolutely secret, we'll avoid any trouble. It all depends on you. Do you still remember creating a plant that only appears every 1,000 years? Shang Qinghua was speechless. Your description is way too broad. Bingay's eaten at least 80, if not 100 plants like that. So you know too. Shin Qingqiu sighed, then spoke 4 words into Shang Qinghua's ear. Shang Qinghua listened, shocked. After a moment, he gave Shin Qingqiu a deeply meaningful glance. Oh, you're not going to tell us what it is? What are you looking at? Asked Shin Qingqiu. Nothing, said Shang Qinghua. It's only long ago I began to suspect that Cucumber Bro was a faithful reader, just one who didn't like expressing his feelings in a normal way. To think you were able to recall an obscure throwaway plot point that I only used once, I'm very moved. Shin Qingqiu refused to respond to that. Tomorrow, leave the mountain with me. We'll go search out its place of origin. Tomorrow? Isn't this a little too sudden? Shang Qinghua stammered. Truthfully, I can't remember its exact location and description. The entire work was nearly 20 million words long, and it was only mentioned in a single paragraph. Let me think about it for a while. I'll tell you once I remember. Then take your time remembering until Lo Binghe murders his way back with Mo Beijun under his command, says Shin Qingqiu with utmost sincerity. At that time, one will kill me and the other will kill you. I'm sure it won't be too late then either. All right, I'll definitely remember by tomorrow. Thankfully, on Anding Peak, trivial matters like assigning rooms and uniforms to newly accepted disciples didn't require the Peak Lord's involvement. Shang Qinghua went back, and he thought long and hard the entire night, racking his brain, shifting and overturning the contents of his mind. Finally, before daybreak, an epiphany struck, and he circled a location on a map. Upon seeing the map, Shin Qingqiu slapped the table, then grabbed Shang Qinghua and set off down the mountain. They spent part of the journey eating and part of it playing, traveled partly by sword and partly by carriage. All in all, it should have been quite pleasant. The only part that was a tiny bit unpleasant was that Shang Qinghua moaned and groaned as he sat in the coachman's seat. Why am I the only one paying for all the food and lodging? He asked. Why, whenever we're taking a carriage, am I also the one driving? Don't you feel any shame? Shin Qingqiu asked from inside the carriage. The funds are communal, provided by Zhang Minxiang. All you're doing is taking them from your waist pouch. Shang Qinghua's heart grew especially sour when he thought back on the words of instruction that Yu Qingwang had given him before they left. Oh, Shang Shidi, for your journey's duration, Qingqiu will be in your care. He's frail, so please watch over him. What was up with that? As great master airplane shooting towards the sky, who put his all into portraying Shang Qinghua as lowly scum, he finally understood this character's pain. Logistics really got no respect. Everyone treated him like a nanny. Who wouldn't understand the original Shang Qinghua's desire to climb the ranks by any means? It was all too sympathetic. You have hands and feet, said Shang Qinghua. Why don't you use them? You're... Fuck! Shin Qingqiu felt the carriage suddenly pitch forward, like Shang Qinghua had abruptly reined in the horse. He raised the curtains on alert. What's wrong? The carriage was currently passing through a stretch of dense forest. All around them, ancient trees soared into the sky, while fallen leaves were scattered everywhere. Most of the sunlight was blocked by layers upon layers of branches. On the ground, it was difficult to find even specks of light. Shin Qingqiu saw nothing strange, but he didn't lower his guard. What were you screaming about? Shang Qinghua was still panicked. Well, just now I saw a woman on the ground slithering by like a snake. If I hadn't stopped the carriage, I would have run right over her. This did sound rather eerie. That is indeed worth screaming over, said Shin Qingqiu. The forest was still and quiet. As of right now, nothing seemed off. Shin Qingqiu didn't dare relax, though. Instead of getting back inside the carriage, he joined Shang Qinghua in the driver's seat. Forming a sword seal with one hand, he observed their surroundings in silence, while his other hand pulled out a handful of melon seeds from the snack bag, which he shoved at Shang Qinghua. Be good, go inside, eat and play. Shang Qinghua could be ordered about and used for odd jobs, but when it came to fighting monsters, he was pretty much useless. He knew his own capabilities and obediently took the melon seeds and started eating. With every step the horse took, he ate a seed. As such, after an instant's time, they finally realized a very serious problem. So the two of them wordlessly looked at the ground and at a trail of familiar melon seeds. Well, no doubt about it, Sangjong Mountain Sex Chong Cao Sao Peaks Dragon Bone Cantaloupe seeds are red in color with golden insides, said Shang Qinghua. This is definitely the trail of seeds of holes that I left. I am aware that peddling melon seeds is one of your peak side jobs. Enough. So here was the problem. How would they return to their original location? The two of them stared at each other. They were going in circles, a classic and very tired scenario. Shang Qinghua suggested an old folk remedy. Well, how about we try sprinkling a male virgin's pee into the horse's eye? Horses have dignity too. Why sprinkle urine in its eyes? Shin Qingqiu asked. And where am I supposed to find a male virgin's pee out of the middle of nowhere? Once these words left his mouth, he realized that Shang Qingqiu was gazing intently at him. Oh, why are you looking at me? As for my former self, well, let's not talk about that for now. You wrote Shin Qingqiu's original character yourself. He's unsullied without degenerate within, always burning with lust. He had an affair in his youth and sought prostitutes as an adult. You think I'm still a virgin? And don't point at yourself. Shang Qingqiu was written the same way. Shin Qingqiu frowned, thinking carefully, and slapped his thigh. He turned to enter the carriage, but he abruptly heard Shang Qinghua howl again from outside. Shin Qingqiu grabbed the thing he was looking for and scurried back. Oh, what is it? He yelled. Shang Qinghua was so terrified that his words no longer had any punctuation marks. When you went in, I felt something hairy brush my neck, and I realized my head, and I saw it was a mass of hair underneath, and it was a huge white face, and clearly couldn't see. Oh, fuck me! Shin Qingqiu lifted his head, and of course he couldn't see anything. He sat down properly, opened the map in his hands, and raised an eyebrow. Well, whatever it is, it's quite clever. Oh, why so? It knows to pick off the weak, and so chose the easier one to scare. He patted Shang Qinghua's shoulder again. No matter how terrifying the creature, you wrote it yourself. Why are you scared? Well, I don't remember writing. Shang Qinghua trailed off. A cucumber, bro. Are you looking at the map? Take a good look. This is the map of the mainland, the entire mainland. Bailu Forest may be marked, but it's only the size of a dot. Look for yourself. Shin Qingqiu pointed at the lower portion of the map. Sangzhong Mountain and Zhaohua Monastery were at the east. Tianyi Temple was in the center, and in the south was the territory belonging to Huanhua Palace. The dot representing Bailu Forest just happened to fall on the border with the last, which had been outlined in diluted ink. Shang Qinghua suddenly understood. Bailu Forest was allotted to Huanhua Palace and its sphere of influence, so right now we aren't walking in circles, we've just entered their protective array. To prevent random passerby from intruding and stirring up trouble, all the large sects had their own security spells. Take, for example, Sangzhong Mountain's heaven ascending stairs. Common folk who didn't know the path would be stuck climbing 13,000 steps, unable to reach the peak, until they were nearly dead. They can only wait for the disciples defending the mountains to escort them back down. Thus, so long as they were trapped in the spell and without guidance, they would only keep running in circles. Shin Qingqiu called out mentally, "Hey, system, you there?" After a while, with no response, he called again. "Didn't you promise 24-hour online service? If you don't respond, I'll leave a negative review." "Hello. The system has entered hibernation mode. You are speaking to the AI assistant. If you require service, please help yourself." Hibernation. Shin Qingqiu split his sides laughing. Now that he thought about it, these past few days, the system hadn't granted him any B points or various other bizarre newly activated point varieties. The system was disconnected from its central power source, Lo Binghe. The AI assistant explained. It is currently undergoing maintenance and updating itself in the background. The system will reactivate once it has been reconnected. We wish you a pleasant self-service experience. Thank you. The current version was already frustrating enough. Wouldn't a new version just straight up kill him in the future? No, wait. The main point was Lo Binghe was your central power source? The fuck? Shin Qingqiu had more questions, but he soon realized that the assistant had only repeated the same thing over and over. What kind of fucking AI assistant is this? Isn't this basically like QQ's automated response? And you still have the nerve to call it AI? QQ is a widely used Chinese instant messaging app which offers various entertainment services. Xin Qingqiu nudged Shang Qinghua. Call your system. Is it still connected? Shang Qinghua blinked. After a moment, he said, it says it's undergoing maintenance. So not only was Lo Binghe the central power source of Xin Qingqiu's system, once he was disconnected, all the systems went down. One could have said this matter was serious, but in truth it wasn't that serious. It only meant that while Lo Binghe was in the abyss, Xin Qingqiu couldn't acquire B points. If he thought about it, this was good. If he couldn't acquire them, he also couldn't lose them, which meant all of the restrictions were off. Xin Qingqiu was still consoling himself when suddenly he sensed the shrubbery by the side of the road was rustling and moving. He snapped his fingers. Come out, he yelled. At his waist, Zhu Ya left its sheath, controlled by the orders from Xin Qingqiu's sword seals, flipping and stabbing and slashing. The creature hidden in the shrubbery seemed to swim like a fish, more slippery than a loach, evading all his stabs. Suddenly, a blinding ray of light flashed before Xin Qingqiu's eyes. The creature let out a shrill whine and leapt back several meters. The shrubbery had been slashed into shambles and was no longer capable of hiding anything, but the thing had long since escaped. There were no further movements. He hadn't used any flashy techniques just now, right? Presumably, he just momentarily reflected a ray of sunlight. It's afraid of light? Shang Qingqiu asked, bringing his head close to Xin Qingqiu's. Damn, it really is a female ghost. But I didn't write about one. I absolutely didn't write about one. The two of them were about to discuss this when they heard the subtle sounds of footsteps. This person's footwork was excellent. If Xin Qingqiu and Shang Qinghua had been any shallower of a cultivation, they definitely wouldn't have noticed them approaching. From the depths of the woods emerged a youth dressed in white. The youth held his sword unsheathed, his expression alert. On seeing his visitors, his face grew astonished, and he quickly sheathed the sword to greet them. This junior sensed some unusual fluctuations around the barrier and henceforth hurried over, not knowing immortals Xin and Shang were here. Oh, please excuse us for not coming to receive you. Xin Qingqiu saw that he was quite handsome, but he looked unfamiliar. This young hero is? He asked politely. The youth almost fell over. Oh, there's a limit to how little dignity you can leave others, Shang Qinghua whispered in his ear. That's Gongyi Zhao. Gongyi Zhao was a little depressed. Though he had been number 1 before Lo Binghe kicked him off that place on the golden tablet, no matter that, he was still number 2. His achievements were remarkable. He had been the favorite for first place, and so he greeted each sect's high-ranking members alongside the old palace master. Therefore, Xin Qingqiu's failure to recognize him came as a surprise. As expected, one's heroism is evident even in youth, Xin Qingqiu said, offering praise. I don't dare presume, Gongyi Zhao demurred. Still, for 2 peak lords to enter Huanhua's palace territory unannounced, why didn't you inform us beforehand? We've neglected our seniors. Our hearts are burdened. He was truly treating Bailu's forest as his sect's territory. As a favored disciple on Huanhua Palace payroll, he had an obligation to ascertain the intentions of 2 visiting peak lords from Sangzhong Mountain sect. Why would they skulk around the border of his sect's sphere of influence? We have no intention of visiting Huanhua Palace, and we're only dealing with a small matter within Bailu Forest, Xin Qingqiu said. By informing Gongyi Zhao that they had come for business, but neglecting to say what that business was, he clearly indicated that he was unwilling to discuss it. In general, Gongyi Zhao would be expected to not ask further questions. After all, a junior interrogating his seniors about their activities would be improper. Gongyi Zhao wavered for a moment. This junior doesn't know the matter or what matter the 2 seniors are seeing to, but he is unskilled. May he be so bold as to request permission to come along and assist? If we refuse him now and let him leave, it won't be just one person coming to look for us later. Xin Qingqiu's face held a smile, his lips barely moving as he muttered to his teammate. It's better if we bring him along. Anyhow, he can fight. Shang Qinghua, who admittedly couldn't fight, muttered in response, well, in the event he won't let us walk away with the sun, moon, dew mushroom. What will we do? If it grows in my garden, of course it belongs to me. If it grows along my fence, it also belongs to me. Don't say that I didn't warn you of Hua Huan's palace's logic. Are you an idiot? Xin Qingqiu asked. When we find it, we take it and leave. He can't forcibly snatch it from us. If he goes back and tattles to his teacher, that's a problem for us in the future. We'll be long gone by then. Like we'd wait for them to catch us. Well, what if our sects become hostile? Your life or diplomatic relations? Choose one. Shang Qinghua didn't hesitate in the slightest. Let's bring him! Shin Qingshou raised his head and decisively said to Gong Yizhao, let's go! And so the hard work of driving was handed to the junior. Oh my god, this is insanity. Senior Shin, there's something Junior doesn't understand, Gong Yizhao said curiously as he was maneuvering the reins. Please speak, says Shin Qingshou. With Senior's level of cultivation, he would only need a moment to break our sex protective array, and he could do it without anyone knowing any better. Why did you emit such a large spiritual fluctuation? That fluctuation wasn't my attempt to break the spell, says Shin Qingshou. It occurred when I fought a mysterious demonic creature. A mysterious demonic creature? In truth, it was hard to tell if it was demonic, but it had an evil appearance, unlike that of normal creatures from our realm. Gong Yizhao frowned. There are human settlements within a 5-kilometer radius from Bailu Forest, but we've never heard word of any demonic attacks. Even fierce beasts are uncommon. Then what exactly was that? Shin Qingshou muttered to himself. It had loose hair draped all over its body and an oddly flexible skeleton and a bloated face like that of a starved, drowned corpse. No matter what it is, it's for the best if it doesn't appear again, Gong Yizhao said. If it does, the two seniors need not trouble themselves and can leave it to this junior. The respect within those words wasn't a pretense. Though Gong Yizhao's understanding of his seniors who carried the Zhuya sword was limited, and they'd only met once or twice from afar during the last Immortal Alliance conference, Shin Qingshou's personal disciple had surpassed Gong Yizhao to secure this top rank. That same disciple had also saved quite a few of Huanhua Palace's disciples, and therefore, Gong Yizhao felt no lack of reverence for him. Shin Qingshou took in that proper bearing, which lacked the slightest bit of appropriate humility. Moreover, Gong Yizhao's appearance was of the same type as Lo Binghei's, gentle and emotional, a handsome youth with a smile in his eyes. It was horribly difficult not to be reminded of Lo Binghei, his unblackened, lovable disciple, and it was horribly difficult not to come away with a favorable impression of the boy. Oh, is Gong Yi Zhao gonna make Lo Binghei jealous when he comes back out? We still have one chapter left. Oh my god, this is insanity. With Gong Yizhao's guidance, the three quickly broke through the Huanhua Palace's protective array and pinpointed their location. The original novel had not been described the place where the sun moon dew mushroom grew in much detail, just briefly mentioned that it was in a stone cave covered by dense greenery. Merely recalling this sliver of content had cost Shang Qinghua half his soul. In his defense, this mushroom wasn't reserved for Lo Binghei. Rather, it was supposed to be for one of his opponents. It was precisely because of this that Shin Qingshou dared to seek it for himself. If it were a thing that affected the main plot line, or if it was some mystical flower or herb meant to provide one of Lo Binghei's power-ups, he wouldn't have had the guts to try to steal it. Trying to snitch resources from the male lead didn't lead to the kind of sweet and forgiving conclusion that you got when you lost a handful of rice for trying to swipe a chicken. But since they were both villains, he figured it would be fine if they reappropriated it. Fortunately, though, Bailu Forest was large, there was only one stone cave. This saved them quite a bit of trouble. Shin Qingshou snapped his fingers, and a bright yellow flame sprang to life at his fingertips. With a flick, the flame swam off into the depths of the damp, pitch-dark cave, a bright tail leisurely swishing behind it to illuminate the path before them. At first, the stone path was wide enough for three people to walk shoulder to shoulder, but the farther they went, the narrower it became, until they had to turn sideways to get through. It twisted this way and that, like the coiled intestines of some giant beast. The lighting was poor. Even Shin Qingshou's ball of flame flickered between bright and dim. He flicked out a few more. The balls of fire chased each other around. Gong Yizhao took up the rear. Shang Qinghua had wanted to wait outside the cave, but Shin Qingshou dragged him in. Maybe he was scared or something, but because he touched Shin Qingshou's arm from time to time, making goosebumps run down wherever it did. Finally, Shin Qingshou couldn't take it anymore. Because they were with an interloper, he lowered his voice to hiss, "Can you stop pinching me?" There was no reply, but at least the touches stopped. Shin Qingqiu continued to grope his way forward, but Shang Qinghua suddenly kicked him in the calf. Shin Qingqiu couldn't help letting out a fuck slip from his mouth. Shang Qinghua's voice sounded far behind him. Shin Shizhong! What did you say? OMXTX! Oh no, you ain't, girl! No, you ain't! His voice echoed through the winding corridors like it had been stretched by the distance. It seemed Shin Qingqiu had been unconsciously walking faster and faster while Shang Qinghua had dawdled, meaning Gong Yizhao, who was taking up the rear, was unable to pick up the pace. He'd already left the other two quite a ways behind. But if Shang Qinghua hadn't been touching his arm, then who had? Or, in other words, what had been touching his arm? Shin Qingqiu ground to a halt. With a blank expression on his face, he patted his arm, attempting to brush off the goosebumps. A few balls of flame were still suspended in midair, burning faintly. The enemy's in the dark, and I'm in the light. With a flip of his left hand, Shin Qingqiu silently produced 2 paper talismans from his sleeve, while his right hand slowly drew Zhuya. The sword grew increasingly bright, but the only thing in front and behind him was dark stone, which gave off a damp, rank odor. Then Shin Qingqiu realized that when something had collided with his calf a second before, it hadn't felt like a kick from a foot. Rather, it had been more like a headbutt. Shin Qingqiu jerked his head down and his gaze met that of a deathly pale and bloated face on the ground. Shin Qingqiu threw his talisman at the face, and in an instant the narrow stone pathway lit up with bursts of fire and flashes of lightning. He wanted to draw his sword, but he hadn't realized the space was too narrow. Before he'd even drawn it halfway out of his sheath, his right arm knocked against the wall of the tunnel, and the hilt of his sword hit the stone with a clang. The thing on the ground was soft and boneless, slithering back and forth like a giant snake. It was more agile than Shin Qingqiu, and it evaded his attack so quickly that even at this point-blank range, the talismans failed to hit it. In the short time that Shin Qingqiu had lost attempting to draw his sword, it already reversed course and with a swish slithered away, heading right in the direction towards Shang Qinghua and Gong Yizhao. "Watch out," he yelled, "there's something heading your way!" At this, Shang Qinghua immediately turned around and yelled, "Young hero, quick! Let's switch places!" He worked in logistics. How could he be in the front line of an assault? Gong Yizhao tried to do as instructed, but the pathway was already narrow enough to raise the hair on one's nape. There was only enough space for one person to walk with a fist's width of margin besides. He couldn't get around at all. Shin Qingqiu yelled again, "On the ground! Look at the ground! It's crawling on the ground!" When Shang Qinghua turned his back, he saw a snake man slithering towards them. He made a swift decision and collapsed on the spot! Gong Yizhao had never seen such an eerie monster either, and he froze for a moment. But upon seeing Shang Qinghua's sudden collapse, his face twitched. "My apologies," he cried as he leapt over Shang Qinghua. Though it was done in an unsightly way, the logistics guy in the vanguard finally at least managed to switch places. "Don't draw your sword!" Shin Qingqiu yelled again. Before he could finish the word sword, Gong Yizhao had carelessly tried to draw. Of course, he only ended up suffering the same disastrous consequence. His hilt hit the stone wall before the sword was halfway out. Shin Qingqiu finally arrived holding his own blade. "Ah, idiot!" he blurted out. Gong Yizhao was rather aggrieved. In truth, Shin Qingqiu also knew that the issue was that the boy's reflexes were too fast, leading him to move before he finished listening. Anyone else would have done the same. But in the past, on the few occasions that Shin Qingqiu had partnered with Lo Binghe, his disciple had understood exactly what Shin Qingqiu had wanted, and always responded perfectly without his master needing to offer a single word of clarification. The contrast was as clear as day. Shin Qingqiu couldn't help but miss the benefits and ease of working with Lo Binghe that had been afforded to him. The stone corridor meandered back and forth. Moreover, it was dark, which made for an extremely advantageous environment for that thing to move through. Shin Qingqiu drew out another handful of talismans, but the thing had already slithered away and disappeared. "Senior Shin, that snake, was that the demonic creature you encountered in the Bailu forest?" Gong Yizhao asked in disbelief. "It was," said Shin Qingqiu. "I still don't understand how that thing managed to escape our pincer attack." By squeezing past me. Expression unchanging, Shang Qinghua got up from the ground and patted dust from his robes. Gong Yizhao pointedly said nothing. "Let's go," said Shin Qingqiu. "This time stay close to me." His reminder wasn't necessary. This time, even on the threat of death, Shang Qinghua refused to stray more than an arm's length away from him. After a dizzying number of turns and twists, the three finally made their way out of the stone corridor. Deep in the belly of the cave, they suddenly came upon a wide cavern. Before, Shin Qingqiu hadn't really understood how anything called the sun, moon, dew mushroom could be found in the depths of a cave which presumably had neither sunlight nor moonlight. The name clearly indicated a thing that gathered spiritual energy from nature and from the essence of the sun and moon, so how could it grow in this place? Now he finally got it. As it turned out, at the cavern's highest point, a giant opening in the ceiling yawned up toward the sky. Sun and moonlight fell through this opening like a spotlight to hit a single point at the heart of an underground lake. A little mound of soil surrounded by glittering water was naturally a hollowed location with excellent feng shui, and it was where the sun, moon, dew mushroom grew. The Dew Lake, Shang Qinghua said with conviction, I'm certain. Having received confirmation, Shin Qingqiu let out a sigh of relief. They had found the right place. The lake before them was filled with no ordinary water, but rather with unsullied morning dew. This unsullied water collected from morning dew, brimming with spiritual energy, and nourished the sun, moon, dew mushroom. After the mushrooms matured, their mycelia sank into the water and soil to nourish the dew water in return. In this way, the spiritual energy cycled back and forth undiminished, never to be exhausted. Admiring the beautiful scene, Gong Yizhao finally understood the Peak Lord's objective, but he still found it a bit odd. Sangzhong Mountain was a major sect that produced mystical herbs and elixirs, and surely they gathered a number of rare and treasured flowers every day. Though this mushroom was scarce and precious, it didn't look like something that could grant immortality, nor a breakthrough to ascension. So how did it merit two Peak Lords personally taking a long journey to collect it? Meanwhile, Shin Qingqiu's eyes were fixed solely on the small, white, fleshy pods at the center of the lake. With a sweep of his sleeves, he stepped resolutely into the water. After a few dozen steps, the dew reached his waist, neither warm nor cold, soaking his skin. It felt as if it could soak right through to the heart. Though those mushrooms were small and looked like little bean sprouts, once they were planted somewhere with excellent feng shui and a bounty of spiritual energy, and nurtured according to plan, Shin Qingqiu hesitated at the sight of the dozen or so white mushrooms growing on the little dirt mound, small and tender. Come to think of it, these mushrooms were a natural wonder. To harvest every last one seemed a bit immoral. But on second thought, if he didn't pick them all now, another villain would pick them up later, which would be even more immoral. And if they messed up and destroyed one, it'd be good to have a few extra as backup just to be absolutely safe. Insurance was critically important. Having made his decision, he carefully pulled up each mushroom together with the little soil and stored them in his sleeves. When the last mushroom was in his hands, Shin Qingqiu suddenly heard the sound of a sword being drawn behind him before he could properly stow it. When he turned around, Gong Yizhao had his sword in hand, and he was staring straight at Shin Qingqiu. At first, Shin Qingqiu thought that Gong Yizhao was protesting his slapdash approach to harvesting, but Shang Qinghua was in the same stance. It was then he knew something had gone wrong, and he held his breath. Suddenly, something long and large leapt out of the surface of the lake. It looked like a giant fish, and it pounced straight towards Shin Qingqiu. A pale and deadened face flew right at him. It was that thing that had been following them since they reached the forest. At the same time, Gong Yizhao finished forming his sword seal, and his sword flew at the thing like a bolt of lightning. But once the thing missed Shin Qingqiu, it sank into the lake and didn't resurface, stirring up the long settled silt at the bottom until the water became turbid and murky. Gong Yizhao recalled his sword. Senior Shin, come back to the shore, quick! But Shin Qingqiu smiled. Don't panic. I want to go fishing. He stood in place without moving, and he slowly extracted a talisman from his robe. A single talisman probably isn't, Gong Yizhao started, but before enough could leave his mouth, Shin Qingqiu rubbed the talisman like he would rub a bill, and the single talisman abruptly became an entire stack. Holding that stack of talismans, Shin Qingqiu thrust his fist into the water, and a chain of booms followed. The surface of the lake exploded, sending up 12 sprays of water into the air, each several meters tall. This explosion also threw the snake man hiding on the bottom of the lake into the air. It was tossed up high before crashing heavily onto the ground by Shang Qinghua's feet. Shin Qingqiu dripped his way back to shore. After being given a meaningful look, Gong Yi Zhao used the hilt of the sword to turn the creature over. After a long time, once it had been, all three were horror-struck. After a long time, Shen Qingqiu turned to look at Shang Qinghua. "What is this?" Shang Qinghua squeezed out 3 words. "I don't know." He really didn't. The creature was vaguely human-like. It had a head full of long hair, but it seemed to be entirely composed of cartilage. Its skin was rough, hard, and covered in patches of scales here and there, like a python half scraped of its scales. Though Shen Qingqiu had originally thought it was a female ghost, upon looking closer at its face, though it was bloated, he could faintly discern that of a man. Shang Qinghua gave Shen Qingqiu a questioning look. "Did I?" he asked. Meaning, did I write about this kind of thing? Shen Qingqiu frowned. "I don't think so." If the original novel had given this thing more than 10 words of description, there was no way he wouldn't have remembered. The two looked hopefully at Gong Yi Zhao. Gong Yi Zhao didn't recognize it either, and he felt a bit awkward. If the two masters cannot recognize this creature, it is even more unfamiliar to this junior. "Let me say something," Shang Qinghua said suddenly. "What if this isn't the creature's natural form?" That made sense. It was so grotesque that it certainly didn't seem like a normal creature, but rather a deformed specimen or a crossbreed. Punishment from the heavens, a curse, or a cultivator who failed to cultivate a forbidden technique? Shen Qingqiu muttered. "All 3 of those events could indeed result in this kind of monster," said Gong Yi Zhao. The snake man on the ground seemed to be irritated by the word monster, and its tail-like back half furiously slapped the ground. Shang Qinghua hurriedly dodged away. "Oh, young hero Gong Yi, young master Gong Yi, don't say such irresponsible things. It seems it can understand us. Use a different word, a different word." The creature's gaze remained fixed on Shen Qingqiu's sleeve. At that moment, Shen Qingqiu noticed that although this creature looked sinister and terrifying enough to make one retch, the eyes gazing through its curtain of tangled hair were incomparably clear, just like the water of the dew lake. He had a sudden realization. "No wonder it attacked us. Look," he pointed. "Its eyes. They probably look like that because it drinks the unsullied morning dew every day. Now look at its scales. There's lichen growing between the cracks, green with a bit of red. The exact same kind that grows on the stone walls. It's been visiting this cave for a long time. Perhaps it's been living off the spiritual dew within the dew lake. And if the sun moon dew mushroom was picked, the main force driving the circulation of spiritual energy in this lake would be destroyed. The spiritual energy in the dew lake would gradually be depleted, and eventually it would become a pool of mere wastewater. It might even dry up completely. That was why this creature had been following them, waiting for a chance to attack. But, Senior Shen, if that monster has been living off of dew water, wouldn't it be better to eat them directly?" Gong Yi Zhao asked. "Why did it never pick the mushrooms for itself?" "When we were in Bailu Forest, it kept obstructing us," said Shen Qingqiu. "At first it only retreated after it was burned by the sunlight reflecting off my sword blade. Perhaps it can't stand light, especially light from the sun and the moon, so it can only move within the shades of forest inside caves and beneath the water." He pointed at the shaft of light beaming down from the cave's dome ceiling. "The sun, moon, dew mushrooms are steeped in sunlight and moonlight all day and all night. Of course it couldn't approach them." As confirmation, he withdrew a tender mushroom and swung it back and forth, and as expected, the snake man's eyes lit up and it urgently craned its neck toward it, bearing a mouthful of dense white teeth. Gong Yi Zhao prodded it with the hilt of his sword and it flipped over again. The snake man strained, struggling and wriggling on the ground, but it couldn't turn back over. Gong Yi Zhao turned his sword to point down, seemingly preparing to stab it through. "Wait," Shen Qingqiu said hurriedly. As expected, Gong Yi Zhao stopped. "Senior?" he asked in confusion. "You said before that common people within a several kilometer radius of Bailu Forest never suffered demonic attacks," Shen Qingqiu asked tactfully. "Yes." "Then that means this creature has never done anything malicious. There's no need to exterminate it. Moreover, all it's ever done has been to drink the dew water in this cave. We were the ones who intruded and disturbed it." Since his senior had spoken, of course Gong Yi Zhao had to obey. Shen Qingqiu spoke true. If this monster really had killed or harmed humans, Huanhua Palace would have discovered and eradicated it long ago. It was precisely because it had never been done any harm that it had not been killed. Therefore, Gong Yi Zhao sheathed his sword, and he observed Shin Qingqiu looking at the creature on the ground with a benevolent gaze. Gong Yi Zhao believed that Shin Qingqiu was cut from the same cloth as the masters of the Zhaohua monastery, who believed in mercy and charity. He could never have guessed that Shin Qingqiu's interest in such strange creatures was equivalent to the average Zongdian reader's interest in the hundreds of flower maidens, each more beautiful than the last. Oh my God, wait. Oh, we're going to talk about it. Oh, Shin Qingqiu. He loves his monsters, huh? Does he now, huh? Even after they had left the depths of the cave, no one noticed that the snake man strenuously struggling on the ground had stopped writhing and was instead ever so slightly shivering. Pressed under its deformed body was a tiny, thin, sun-moon dew mushroom sprout. In that pair of incongruously bright eyes, a raging fire began to burn. Oh, okay. Uh-oh. Oh no. Uh-oh. What are we gonna do with this? After exiting Bailu Forest, Gong Yi Zhao invited the two peak lords to visit Huanhua Palace. He could also notify the old palace master. Shin Qingqiu declined. After all, we've already enjoyed your assistance. It would be impolite to trouble you further. You're joking. Go to Huanhua Palace for what? A mushroom viewing party? What if your higher-ups take things too seriously and insist on discussing property rights? Realizing that Gong Yi Zhao still wanted to detain them, Shang Qinghua took the lead. A young hero, Gong Yi, let's dispense with the courtesy today. We can visit properly next time. If you come to Sangzhong Mountain Peak in the future, you can visit Shangjing Peak. Your senior Shin will definitely look after you well. Shin Qingqiu gave him a look. Shang Qinghua immediately shut up. Shin Qingqiu finally recovered his expression and smiled. As Shang Shidi says, Qijing Peak awaits your arrival. Gong Yi Zhao knew that just like its name, the people of Qijing Peak were fond of peace and quiet and didn't like to be disturbed by guests. He wasn't sure if these were just words of courtesy, but he smiled either way. I will remember Senior Shin's words, he said. I may indeed have the chance to disturb you in the future. When that time comes, to whom should I send the message announcing my arrival? Without a second thought, Shin Qingqiu said, give it to my disciple Lo Bing. After he spoke, everyone felt silent. The atmosphere turned a bit odd. Though he was stuck for a moment, Shin Qingqiu quietly flapped his fan twice and stiffly continued, his Xizhong, Mingfan. Gong Yi Zhao's heart filled with conflicted feelings. Rumor had it that after the Peak Lord of Qijing Peak lost his beloved disciple at the Immortal Alliance Conference, he had for a time fallen into inconsolable heartbreak, being out of his mind with grief. The man before him right now didn't seem like the one who had accepted that Lo Binghe was really gone. Perhaps Shin Qingqiu hadn't come here primarily to pick the mushroom, but rather to take his mind off of things so that he could briefly forget Lo Binghe's existence. Otherwise, why would two Peak Lords pursue this task in person? Senior Shang must have come to supervise Senior Shin and make sure he didn't do anything rash. Then, after Shin Qingqiu had forced himself to smile this whole trip, Gong Yi Zhao had managed to poke his sore spot and stir up melancholy thoughts. As expected, what a deep master and disciple bond. They were just friends. Until they parted ways, Gong Yi Zhao kept looking back at Shin Qingqiu every 10 steps. His gaze a tangled mix of awkwardness, sympathy, sorrow, and admiration. Shin Qingqiu was a bit creeped out by this gaze. It had only been a slip of the tongue. What stories was Gong Yi Zhao making up in that head of his? It's true, Shang Qinghua sighed when they were alone again. It's actually true. Shin Qingqiu gave him a kick that was neither heavy nor light. What's true? I've been watching you for a while, and I have something to say. Besides, keeping it in is uncomfortable, said Shang Qinghua. Cucumber bro, did you really see Lo Binghe as the apple of your eye? Did you adore him as your darling baby and disciple? He went on, analyzing the evidence piece by piece. I heard your Qijing Peak's disciples say that ever since returning from the Immortal Alliance Conference, Shin Shizhong has been out of his mind with grief, his thoughts wandering all over the place. Time after time you call Lo Binghe's name, and you stand in front of that sword mound and sigh in sorrow. I didn't believe it, but just now I finally witnessed it with my own eyes. Cucumber bro! I really never thought that you were this sort of person. Fuck, out of your mind again? Is this phrase going to be the eternal stain on my lifetime of hard work? My disciples all supposedly walk the path of scholarly detachment. When did they suddenly turn into such gossips? Spreading this sort of nonsense everywhere. What are you doing with your master's image? Shang Qinghua continued to dig his own grave. Cucumber Bro, can I ask, how did you see Lo Binghe? I remember you were one of his fans, right? You roasted a huge number of characters I wrote, but even so, you never roasted him. To you, is he a character, or is he, Oh my god. Oh my god. A chill ran down Shin Chingcho's back. This bizarre interrogation from Great Master Airplane shooting towards the sky was identical in tone to a high school girl's gossiping in the dorms after lights out. Tell me, do you have a crush on? No, what are you talking about? Dodging the question. Don't be shy. Ha ha ha. I hate you. Go to bed. Lightning from the 9 heavens. Shang Qinghua was in fact innocent. He was honestly asking and was interested in discussing the matter. It was Shin Qingcho who was overthinking the skeletons in his closet. Why aren't we moving? Shin Qingcho snapped, interrupting him. What? Shang Qinghua stared. Shin Qingcho stared back and then shoved the reins into his hand. Gong Yi Zhao left, so we need a driver. Why, haven't you driven it even once? Shang Qinghua asked suspiciously. You should be considerate towards the poisoned invalid. Invalid my ass, thought Shang Qinghua, who was happily fighting monsters and blowing up spiritual lakes just now. Have some dignity. Shin Qingcho relaxed within the carriage and shook out his sleeves. There were still 5 years before Lo Binghe would leave the endless abyss and return to the human realm. If nothing went wrong, the mushrooms they just harvested would definitely be enough to save Shin Qingcho's life. However, he had forgotten the fundamental stupidity of Proud Immortal Demon Way. If nothing went wrong at such a crucial juncture in a novel storyline, well, that meant it wasn't exciting enough. Oh my god! Ooh! Oh! 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 Oh shit! Oh shit! I don't even know where to start. All I know is that I need to go eat some lunch, and then we will return and talk about this. In the words of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 6 competitor Laganja Estranja, y'all wanted a twist, eh? Oh my god! I needed to take a drink right then because I needed to stop screaming because what? I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with my body. I don't know what to do with anything. MXTX! Oh my god! How can this volume end with such a roller coaster of emotions and just the highs and lows? And why didn't the donghua adapt this? Now I know why y'all are foaming at the mouth for season 2. I know why you're lying on a train track being like, give us season 2 or just let it come. I get it now. Oh, I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where to start. I mean, I do. We should go through it chronologically, but Wyber-kun is just staring at me like, what do you want me to do? I was like, oh, Conspiracy Board Sama! I feel for you so hard. I did not anticipate 90% of this chapter set. I figured he was going to have to throw him into... I figured that Lo Binghe was going to get thrown into the abyss because that has to happen in the story, which we're going to kind of detail up here. I felt like it had to happen, right? The thing is that so, like, the fudge is to what point? I'm, like, really starting to question this system now because it's called the Scum Villain Self-Saving System, right? And Lo Binghe has the system, the Fog of Misunderstanding system. And we don't even know what Shang Qinghua's system is. The author reflection system. Shang Qinghua, I'm going to calm myself down. Shang Qinghua is great master airplane shooting towards the sky. They've been isekai'd into this story as well. The damn author has. This is amazing. And I feel like, one of the reasons why this novel feels so fresh, even though it is the oldest of all of MXTX's works, is that I can see under the surface the things happening in this novel. I can see where they sprouted ideas for MXTX for Modao Zushi, where they sprouted ideas for Heaven Official's Blessing. I can see the influence. I can see MXTX explore this idea and go, I might do that later. The problem is, I don't know if MXTX is just, repeating with a different flavor ideas from this novel to Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing, or if they're going to go completely the opposite in this version. And it's like, well, if you want to see what it would actually be like, go watch Modao Zushi and go watch Heaven Official's Blessing. I don't know. And the fact that there's this real world web novel component to it is something that is completely foreign from anything else that MXTX has done that I've read so far. So I don't know what MXTX is going to do with it. I have no clue. And because I'm coming from like an outsider perspective, I don't know the tropes involved in wuxia and zhansha novels that MXTX is necessarily poking fun at. I have no clue what to expect. I don't know. And now the author is involved. It's like all bets are off. All bets are off. There's just this is truly a no man's land of feral chaos energy, and it's just getting more and more chaotic. And I'm like, I don't think Shin Qingqiu realizes, even now, how insane this could get. Like, the system is literally recalibrating. It is literally starting over into something new. The fact that they didn't know about the Snake Man monster in the cave. They'd never seen it before. The author didn't know what it was. I'm like, there could be mutations and butterfly effects within this web novel. It's literally like the idea. I love the concept of the death of the author, right? And the concept of the death of the author, I've talked about it in other reactions, but it's this concept. Roland Barthes started it in his scholarship, and I read it in grad school, and I was really captivated by it. I did a class on authorship and about as a writer, and I'm sure MXTX would, coincide with this and collaborate with this. I wish I could get her feedback with it. But in the interviews I've read with her, I kind of see that she would probably be agreeing along the same lines. Once you write something, his theory proposes that once an author puts a work out there into a space, that it is no longer their work. They may own intellectual property and get royalties and get money for people buying it, but how the audience interprets it is going to be completely dependent upon the audience's experience, their own environments, their own individual identity, how the audience interprets certain meanings. Even if the author intends for it to be one way, the author can determine another way. A character that the author may like, the audience may absolutely dislike, or a character that the author does not like, the audience may fall in love with them. It just, once you publicly put a piece of writing into a space, it is now collectively owned by you and the audience that read it. And it's a fascinating concept because I feel like you can kind of justify when audiences, like, they cling to a piece of writing when the author is found to be like somewhat problematic. It's like, I kind of view it to where it's sort of like the Harry Potter situation, because I don't like J.K. Rowling. I think she shares far too much on social media. I don't really agree with her viewpoints on a lot of things, but I grew up with Harry Potter and I grew up with that story, and I'm like, there are elements of that story that I can apply to my life and I find fascinating, and I don't want to just abandon those things that help shape my entire being and identity. But at the same time, I also recognize that she's a problematic author for me, and I don't agree with a lot of her stances on things. And so Death of the Author kind of allows you as the audience to keep a hold of a work and find meaning in it while disassociating yourself from the writer for whatever reason that you have for it. And I think that it's a powerful tool that you can use to kind of justify keeping meaning with something that's shaped your, foundations of your being, while also acknowledging that an author may be problematic. And I feel like MXTX kind of does that with this story. I'm sure that she grew up reading Zhansha and Wuxia novels, and they've shaped her writing and her views on things, but she's satirizing a lot of it in this story by saying, like, look at what this author was doing. It wasn't that kind of problematic, but I'm sure she still enjoys the stories, but she recognizes and disassociates the parts that, you know, don't work for her from the parts that do. And I think that that's interesting. And so the idea that the author is here and that it's a chance and an opportunity for Qingqiu and Xinyan essentially to be able to communicate with that author and be like, well, this is what, and the author is already starting to pick Qingqiu apart and be like, wait a minute, are you like in love with Lo Binghe? Like, it opens up a lot of unknowns for volume 2 through 4, and I have no idea where it's going. I may have to read ahead, y'all, because I don't want to be spoiled. I want to go in blind. I may have to read ahead and find out what's happening and go from there. That's all I know to do. That's all I know to do. Oh my God. Yeah. Yep. That's probably what I'm gonna have to do. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about this chapter set. We got 2 images in this chapter set, which was such a spoil upon spoils. The first image is the most heartbreaking thing in the world. Thank you, artists, for drawing Qingqiu with his courage to stab Lo Binghe, and Lo Binghe looking like a puppy dog that was kicked to the curb in the middle of a heat wave. This doesn't wreck my heart any. I was about to cry in the first chapter. About to cry in the first chapter. The only thing I think keeping me from crying was knowing I still had 3 chapters to get through, and the fact that I'm like, but MXTX, you know, I want these 2 to end up together, but you've just now made this so much harder. And I'm like, we're gonna go through it. The other image is, I love Qinghua. Now that I know that they're the author, stuck in this world alongside of Qingqiu. And then poor Gongyi Zhao is just like, should I even be here? But yeah, I love the idea of these 2 people from the real world isekai'd into this story, and they both are trying to figure out what to do. What do we do? Like, the authors electrocuted themselves, and now they're stuck in this body. Oh my God, it's just, and they die in the original story, so I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to do like the OG versus new, because it seems like the whole thing is getting recalibrated, but we're going to try for the moment. We're going to pop over here and talk about this as Huckleberry is like, you winch. Do my corgi self-throwing system. So the OG versus new. We do know a couple things. I'm going to try to use like a better marker here. Try to use like a better marker for this part. We know in the original novel, Lo Binghe was just kicked into the abyss. But here, he was stabbed in the chest, which is why Qingqiu's like, shit. He stabs and he's foaled, or he was kind of pushed through that, it's like Qingqiu had a final thrust and it like pushed him back. I don't think he sliced him twice. I think he accidentally got him in the chest and then he fell backwards, right? In the other one, Qinghua dies at the hands of Mo Beijun because he was a traitor. And here, we don't know. He might still live. I thought it was interesting how, like, back in the last chapter set, it was foreshadowed because Qingqiu was like, oh, look, he's pretending to fall by the tree. Oh, look, he's pretending he didn't know anything about not releasing the moon python rhinoceros. And here now we know, no, he didn't know, because he's been isekai'd into Shang Qinghua's body, just like Qingqiu has been inhabited by Xinyan. It's like both of them have inhabited their character's body, so they're acting out of character, right? I'm curious now to know, like, at what point did Qinghua activate his out of character mode? What did he have to do? Although he did say he had to suffer being an infant and going through an entire childhood of destitution and misery and being like, so you think you have it worse than me? You just showed up already in adulthood. How dare you? So Qinghua has been in this novel for a long time. So I'm so curious based on that, like, what butterfly effects have happened. Obviously, one of the biggest butterfly effects that even Xinghua didn't predict was Mo Beijun showing up. He was like, shit, why is he here already? But it's one of those things like, what butterfly effects have Xinghua had that are affecting the story? Are there any other characters that have isekai'd their way into this story? Now that we know it's not just Xinyan, now that we know that it's him and the author of the story, all bets are off. There could be a whole plethora of readers of the story that have been isekai'd into this world. We don't know. We have no clue. MXTX can do whatever the hell she wants. So that's why I'm like, we have no idea from here what's going to happen. And you all are sitting at home going, hee 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 hee. And I'm like, alert, alert, alert. I'm like, the inner Taurus in me is like, well, I don't know where this is headed. There's like no way to know. It's like, damn Willy Wonka. We have no way of knowing which way we're going. My dog does this thing where he just puts the ball right on the edge and expects me to use my foot to get to it. He's a little demon. So, oh my God, I guess we're almost 15 minutes and I haven't even opened up the chapter. So after completing this task, he turned right around and left. So yeah, Mo Beijun, as far as we know, is not inhabited by an isekai person. He's just like an NPC. But the system tells Shin Qingqiu he has this critical quest, the endless abyss and endless hatred, a sky filled with crystal frost and tears of blood. So let's break down where the system's at versus what's happening with the system. I feel like we need to talk about the system. Get up, get down with the system. I feel like that's what Shin Qingqiu is saying at this moment. So we have this endless abyss scenario that supposedly has to happen. It is a required event. And Shin Qingqiu has been steeling himself this entire time to be like, I've got to do it. There's no way around it. I'll die. My character will die if I don't complete this mission. So I have to do it. And for the most part, everything seems on the surface to go as planned. But under the surface, it's a bit different. I also like that Shin Qingqiu kind of gets mad at the system again for changing the point values. He's like, it's not going to matter. All of my keeping track of the B points, we're back to 0. Doesn't matter. And I'm like, son of a bitch. I was doing math. I was adding it up. I was going to bring it to this discussion. Not a problem anymore. Not even important. We're back to a big old fat goose egg. And the system's recalibrating. So it's going through a Windows update during these chapters. So what the fudge? But yeah. So Shin Qingqiu, this chapter was so heartbreaking because the problem is, even if Shin Qingqiu doesn't want to do the deed, he knows he has to. It has to be him. He has to do it. He offers Lo Binghe the chance to jump himself. He's like, do you want to jump down? Just that way I don't have to do it. Maybe I can get out of it and it's on you and you won't be so mad at me. But the system, he tries to selfishly get that done, but it does not work, right? So out to the side here, we need to talk about Lo Binghe and Shin Qingqiu and kind of where they're at mentally at this point. So Lo Binghe thinks that this demonic chi awakening, that it equals his disappointment in Lo Binghe. He feels that Shin Qingqiu is disappointed in him, and he's been cultivating, for 2 years under our portable grandfather, Meng Mo. And Shin Qingqiu, he's sad, but determined to keep with the plot because he's been told to. Because the system said so. Now, I wonder if this is going to be a thing where, now at this point, here's the thing. Shin Qingqiu did the thing that he was required to do to get Lo Binghe to go down into the abyss to find the sword that he'll use to conquer all 3 kingdoms. What Shin Qingqiu had to do has happened, and it was in order for Lo Binghe to get stronger. That's what it was. So I wonder a couple things. I wonder, and I'm going to put this down a little bit further. I wonder if Lo Binghae is going to realize. I'm just trying to find any way, shape, or form that I can make it to where Shin Ching-cho doesn't end up dying. That Lo Binghae, maybe the massive fog of misunderstanding will come and play a part in this. But if it's Lo Binghae realizing that his actions led to him getting stronger. So, for example, he sees Shin Ching-cho in the future. Supposedly, this is supposed to be 5 years later, is according to the book how it goes. Now, again, all bets are off. All bets are off. So who knows if it's going to be 5 years? It could be a month from now. It could be 10 years. We don't know, because now it's like everything's happening out of order. Shin's just going by what he knows and thinks is going to happen, but we don't know if that's going to be the case. So yeah. So, you know, my thing is, one, could Lo Binghae, because he was so into Shin Ching-cho and in love with him, that he ends up saving Shin Ching-cho, and Shin Ching-cho's like, well, you should hate me. And Lo Binghae's like, well, I realized when I got down into the abyss that there was this sword that gave me all this power, and inadvertently, Shizun, your actions allowed me to get stronger. So how could I possibly hate you? Like maybe that? I'm desperately searching for straws. And I don't want to know. The story's going to tell me, but like maybe that. Maybe. Or maybe we'll get to the other point I have here in a second. But Shin Ching-cho is like trying to ask, like he asks like he does in the original version, how long did you cultivate? 2 years. And so Lo Binghae assumes that the silence means that he's disappointed with him or mad at him. But Shin Ching-cho is just saying it because he has to, or he feels that he has to, right? In order to make this plot point come to light, right? He's like, he was a little bit envious and a little bit admiring that Lo Binghae had this talent and had been cultivating it, right? And so Lo Binghae like falls to his knees. But here's the thing, Lo Binghae is trying to ask for forgiveness. And what's interesting is that Shin Ching-cho, he thinks that this action is not in line with the plot, so it can't happen. And he's like, why are you kneeling before me? Like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't, like, how dare you? Like, no, you can't kneel at this critical juncture. He's like, if you're kneeling in front of me asking for forgiveness, he's like, get up. I don't want you to even matter at me. And then that's when Lo Binghae brings up the idea of that people are good and bad and demons can be good or evil. The thing that crushed my soul was that Shin Ching-cho forgot about what he said. He forgot. And I was like, no, I thought Shin Ching-cho had kept that in mind this whole time, that he'd been remembering it this whole time, that he was going to be like, okay, well, this is going to save me. This will be fine. I thought he was going to bring it up like at the edge of the abyss and be like, hey, remember what I told you, Lo Binghae, no matter what happens, I think that you could still be a good guy. But because of the other sex and everything, I got to do this, and then just like pushes him down. I thought that was what was going to happen, but he forgot that he told him that. And so then Shin Ching-cho's like, well, I did say that, but you can't get out of this because this is what that symbol means, and this is what I know it to mean. And Lo Binghae's like, but you said, and Shin Ching-cho's like, I've said a lot of things. And so then we have the idea of Shin Ching-cho's words, and he compares it to his impulsive posts with the novel. And I feel like this part is really crucial, and we're going to put that up here of Lo Binghae taking the words to heart, because I think this is a critical point of MXTX's message, and it's something that I, as a content creator, have to think about, and it's something that I'm sure MXTX had to think about, because what it's meaning is, like, when you say something, you may, to yourself, think that it's an offhand comment, that you don't really mean anything by it. You're just either saying it in the moment because you're like emotionally compromised, or you're just like, I'm really mad at this moment, or really passionate, or like irritated, or having something else going on that's making me upset, and so I'm just taking it out in this moment and saying it. But your words, they do have value and meaning. And something that you may think is a throwaway comment that you didn't mean anything by, and just kind of like, it's like, oh, I just said that. It's fine. I don't really think. And you don't think two things about it later on. You go about your day and you don't think about it. But someone else hearing that may take it completely to heart, and it shape their entire perception of you. And that's such an insane thing, but it happens, right? Like I have said things just randomly in my videos, or wrote something randomly in a comment, and then months and months and months later, someone will mention in the comment, be like, well, back then when you said, and I was like, oh my God, you still remember that? What? And I have a Shin-Ching-Cho moment where I'm like, did I say that? And it's like, oh my God, yeah. And so I also feel like MXTX is taking this moment to kind of say, you know, that she has those same moments too, but also it can be flipped on the other end, whereas someone can comment something and they don't mean anything by it, but I take it really to heart, right? There are some comments I've read that I'm like, I feel like they were, you know, personally attacking me, or that they were like calling me out or saying something about it. And then once I've talked to that person, they were like, oh, I didn't mean that at all. I'm sorry it came across this way. This is what I meant. And I'm like, and it's just that communication fog of misunderstandings, you can get it confused. And I feel like, you know, MXTX may have had moments where someone commented on her work negatively and she took it completely to heart, and that commenter's like, what? And that kind of relates to Shin-Ching-Cho in his post being like, yeah, I've like, you know, said posts about that like all the time, and nobody ever, he's like, I never really thought about that, right? But, oh, he's like, I made hundreds of posts in bright red font about wanting to castrate Shin-Ching-Cho, and it wasn't the least bit funny. And so he's like, he's just so worn out and tired at this point. And he'd been trying to brainwash himself into the idea of this has to happen. But now he's like, I have to do this. And I love the poem that he says. He's like, if I don't make him suffer, he's not going to be able to bloom. Without 3 years training in the realms below, how could a demon king over the worlds loom? He's like, he's got to go down into the depths and get better, or he's not going to be this protagonist. It has to happen. Oh. And he's like, but nothing could lift his spirits. And the fact that he says he doesn't want to kill Lo Binghe, but he can't look at him, and Lo Binghe doesn't understand why he's looking at him so coldly. And he's like, what that man said wasn't wrong. The human realm is no longer a place for you. You need to return back to the place where you belong. And he didn't want to force him, but Lo Binghe kept trying to go. And I love that Lo Binghe moves forward, but Shin-Ching-Cho doesn't want to retreat. He's steeled himself that he has to do this to stay in the game, and then he ends up stabbing him. My thing was, when he stabs him, he's like, in the original work, Lo Binghe was only kicked, and now there was an extra stab to add to his grudge. The only thing is, like, Lo Binghe holds on to it, and Shin-Ching-Cho doesn't exert force. He doesn't move further. He doesn't do anything. And Lo Binghe notices that. He's like, it hadn't pierced his heart. But I love like the red string of fate, like the sword in his chest connecting back to Shin-Ching-Cho in his own heart. And that's when he withdraws. Like, he's like, oh shit, I see that connection and it's too real. Ah! And then Lo Binghe, when his body sways, he realized that Shin-Ching-Cho hadn't dealt him a killing blow. And his eyes shone once more, like sparks struggling within burnt ashes. And like he was trying to smile. And then he extinguishes that last light, Shin-Ching-Cho does, when he knocks him down into the abyss. And, I mean, Modao Zushi references, y'all know where we're connecting with that. That feeling of someone you love falling down into an abyss. We're going to talk about Modao Zushi here in just a second. But, so my thought in that moment was that maybe Lo Binghe too, in that moment, realizing that Shin-Ching-Cho could have killed him, but did not. I wonder if he's going to come back and ask him about that later and be like, why didn't you kill me when you had the chance? And if that comes later on in the story, like when they meet up 5 years later or something, and Lo Binghe is like, why didn't you kill me when you had the chance? And Shin-Ching-Cho, if he comes to his senses by then and realizes he likes Lo Binghe, and he's like, because I liked you and I didn't want to do it, but I had to, then that might save his life inadvertently. I need to tell myself these things so that I don't freak out for Shin-Ching-Cho too much. But I don't know. At this point, it feels feels like Lo Binghe is going to come back and be pissed and be this evil demon lord. And I'm like, is he going to get all these girls into his harem? I don't know. But I don't know either, because Lo Binghe might be just settled on revenge against, or trying to figure out what's up with Shin Ching-cho, and he may not care about the women. Or he may get the women into his harem, but not to be sexual with them, but instead to be like, okay, you're going to help me get intel, or you're going to help me capture him, or do whatever. I feel like one of the reasons that Lo Binghe in the original novel had this harem filled with all of these different women was because he was innocent and naive, and they were like, why don't you have sex with us and put us in your harem? And he was like, okie dokie, and would just let him in without a qualm. But now I feel like he's steeling himself and having a little bit more withdrawn energy maybe, and so he won't just... I told the moderators, I am all for like a polycule or a polyamorous relationship. I like multi-shipping. I do. I don't really have a problem with the harem anime. I mean, look at Free. Look at Free with Toby Swim Club. That thing's a damn polycule. It's fine. But there's just something about MXTX stories where I fall in love with the main duo and I don't want anybody else to be with them. I want them to just have each other. And I don't know what to do about that. Like with Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing, I couldn't ship those two characters with anybody else. And it's the same way here, but that's what makes this chapter so heartbreaking, is because I want to just ship Lo Binghe and Shin Ching-cho. But now I'm like, I don't want Lo Binghe to have a harem of women unless they're just all platonic besties. Like, I don't want him to be in a relationship romantically with anybody else but Shin Ching-cho. But Shin Ching-cho has like made it to where, how is that even possible? And it's just... It's very concerning. Right? So then he gets out, and Shin Ching-cho is just completely grieving. I think everybody in all the sects know that Shin Ching-cho liked Lo Binghe. I think it's not a secret to anyone now. I think all of them know, right? And the idea that Liu Chingay, like, pats him on the shoulder, being like, you'll find more disciples. It was so sad. And then, like, Ning Ying Ying and Ming Fan being like, what do we do? It's just so sad. And then at the very end, when he says, whatever, what's done is done. It's like he's like, I did what I did. I don't know what else to do. Here's my thing. We established that Lo Binghe is the only character that cannot die in this story. He can't die. He is the main protagonist. He is the only one that's guaranteed to live, right? Right. So... my question is, I'm wondering one of two things. One question could be, is since Lo Binghe is the only character that cannot die by the story's logic, will there come a point in time where the system tells Lo Binghe, hey, you can't do this. If you do this, you're going to lose all these points and you're going to die. And Lo Binghe says, but I'm the protagonist. I can't die. And does it anyway and saves the day. Is that going to be like the big monkey's paw twist at the end that Shin Ching-cho and Tsinghua had to follow all these rules and stay with the system? But since Lo Binghe isn't, bound to that, does he break through the fog of misunderstandings at the end, break the system, and end up with Shin Ching-cho that way? Maybe. Another thought I just had literally 10 seconds ago is, what if someone gets isekai'd into Lo Binghe's body in this next part? Because Shin Ching-cho, Shin Yan inhabited his body at this random point in his adulthood. What if somebody gets isekai'd into Lo Binghe's body, is a new person, and then him and Shin Ching-cho thinks it's the original Lo Binghe from before, but this is someone different, and they're like, and they do. I don't want that to happen because I want it to be the Lo Binghe that Shin Ching-cho fell in love with and reworks that relationship with. But what if it happens? What if it's that way? And Shin Ching-cho thinks that Lo Binghe is going to be pissed and trying to get revenge on him. Whereas this new Lo Binghe is like, I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to be doing here? What's happening? And they develop a relationship where they get to be like each other around each other and not the characters that they're trying to portray. I don't know. The whole reveal of Shang Tsinghua is completely annihilating any preconceived theory I had. All bets are off. all bets are off at this point. So they go through all the problems that was in the aftermath, where we find out that the Donghua Monastery, they were fine. They put up the barrier. They didn't lose that many. The Huanhua Palace suffered the greatest amount of losses, like over 100 people. Sangshang Mountain took the least damage, only 30 or so injured. But the only person that died technically was Lo Binghe. And then Lo Binghe ends up winning the Immortal Alliance Conference contest. I feel like the defeating of the head spiders is literally the only reason that happened. Otherwise, it should have been Gong Yi Zhao. That's so wild to me. And the fact that Shin Qingqiu, who did the bet on a whim to just kind of be funny and play with the system, like before he had to go do the thing, he's like, I'll make a bet and play the system. I know I'm going to win. Now, when he actually gets the prizes, he's like, okay, I guess go do this. Like, he's literally depressed and sad by what he had to do. And I love that it's Ming Yingying or Ning Yingying who comes to him and is like, you need to get a grip. Like, she's like, you need to get a grip on things. And so he's like, well, she was supposed to be the one clawing at the ground wailing, but instead it's me. Well, he has taken on the responsibilities of all the harem girls, which is another reason I don't think Lo Binghe will get a harem. I think that they'll just help him. But I feel like all of that harem business is going to fall to Shin Qingqiu. And he's like, what are you doing? But, yeah. He's like, he really was lonely. And I love the idea that Ning Yingying has actually grown in this moment. I love that. I love it. It's really sweet that she's actually grown a lot and she actually comes at him and tries to help him. That's really, really nice. But then the system says, well, look at you. The legend begins. Now we have this new setup. The legend begins. The fall and rebirth of Lo Binghe. Yeah. And so you got 10,000 satisfaction points. Again, this part here, the fall and rebirth, makes me wonder if like somebody's going to get isekai'd into Lo Binghe's body. Because at this point, like Shin Qingqiu, he regrets everything that he did of having to like push him down into the abyss, but he knew it had to happen because the system told him to. But he hates himself for it. And he makes the note with the sword breaking that the Lo, even when he sets up the little stone beside like where he was buried at and he goes to like grieve at it, I was like, oh my gosh. But he does establish, he's like, no matter what happens now, he's like, it doesn't matter. Everything with Lo Binghe that I had worked at before is gone. In Shin Qingqiu's mind, he's like, everything I worked for with him is gone. He's going to be reborn as this demon king. He's going to be the protagonist. There's nothing I can do. But I'm like, and then how is he going to keep himself from getting turned into a human stick figure? And how is he going to do that anyway? That's, I feel so bad for him because it's like, he was trying to make it to where Lo Binghe wouldn't hate him when he came back. But now seeing what he's done and the fact that he stabbed him in the chest and all that, he just thinks what I did after all those years, it doesn't matter now. In Lo Binghe's, well, in Shin Qingqiu's mind, he believes that all his work is for nothing. In his mind, he believes that everything he did, it doesn't matter. In the end, he ended up doing even worse than the original novel, and he stabbed him rather than just kick him off. He's like, everything I did, Lo Binghe will not care about at all. He's going to try to just kill me, and that's going to be the end of it. Whereas, I'm wondering if Lo Binghe, and my dog won't leave me alone, but I'm wondering if Lo Binghe will remember his kindness, and if any of that will transfer over. That's the big question. I mean, assuming he doesn't get reincarnated by somebody else. That is the question. The problem that made me so sad at the end of the chapter that we left on was this idea, I'm going to straighten this, was the idea that he was questioning. He's like, Shin Qingqiu, you were kind to me all these years and we had all these great times together and everything. Did that not mean anything to you? And he ends up still getting stabbed and taken into the abyss. So the big question is, with Lo Binghe's character, it's like, is he going to think like Shin Qingqiu thinks, and that it was all for nothing, and that he didn't actually mean any of it and he was going to, kill him or throw him into the abyss anyway? Or is he still going to believe that Shin Ching-cho was trying to be kind to him? And he's going to be like, well, why did you do the things that you did? What was the reason? Did you have a reason? Were you doing this for a reason? Why did you could have killed me on top of that mountain and just ended it, but you didn't. So why? Why did you ask me to go and jump into the abyss? You asked me to do it. So that might have a bearing too. The fact that Shin Ching-cho asked him to jump in so that he wouldn't have to kill him. Is Lo Bing-hei going to remember that and come back and say, why did you ask me that? Why did you ask me to jump in? Did you not want to kill me? You said you didn't want to kill me. My dog is going to be annoying this whole time. But he's going to be like, were you trying not to kill me? Was something making you kill me? What was the reasons? So my only hope is that Lo Bing-hei doesn't immediately want to kill him. He might be mad at him, rightfully so. But he's had 5 years to stew on it. Is Lo Bing-hei going to have his own whiteboard coon conspiracy board of reasons Shin Ching-cho threw me into the abyss and is going to be trying to figure it all out? Whereas Shin Ching-cho, the answer is because the plot told me I had to. I don't know. But then we get this. Due to extraordinary circumstances, a new point value has been activated. Lo Bing-hei's heartbreak points. And due to the excessively high heartbreak level, the satisfaction points have been reset to 0. Please continue to work hard. So it seems like the system is rebooting itself and resetting itself. So now we have badass points. And we have heartbreak points. So are they going to even each other out? I feel like whatever badass points or B points that Shin obtains, he has to be careful now because he can obtain satisfaction points. But then if he makes a mistake and breaks Lo Bing-hei's heart, he's going to lose those points he just won. So we're just going to make it even more complicated. Why not make it more complicated? What's wrong with that, right? Oh my God. He's like, what are these heartbreak points? He's like, what? I thought we had now we have my personality points. We have satisfaction points. We have all these other ones. What was at the end of the battle? Their favor points, right? That was what that chapter was called. But what is that part here? I want to get back to Yu Qingyang. I want to get back to the battle. Let me find that one where it's, the two of them at the end of the battle. What do they announce? There's like a thing. Luckily, the system has different point values or it has a different font. Yes, it says character complexity rating, character depth, character suspense. So he's like, oh, well, what are these really different point types? So now we not only have heartbreak points, we have character depth, suspense, and complexity alongside but I don't know, because the system is supposedly recalibrating. We're going to talk more about it, but yes, he's like years of slaving away at the system's every command. He's back to square one in a single night. And he's like, I truly am. I'm suffering the life of a villain. Mm-hmm. So this part is interesting to me because Shang Qinghua, having the porcelain bowl there, he sounded like a used car salesman. He didn't sound like a character from the story, which makes sense because he's great airplane master. It's like airplane shooting towards the sky. To me, Shin Ching-cho's reaction to Shang is exactly like Liu Qinggei's reaction to Shin Ching-cho when they first met. He's like, why are you acting out of character? And Shin Ching-cho's like, what? And now Shang Qinghua is acting out of character and Shin Ching-cho's realizing it. It's like, it's crazy, right? But he's like, oh, it's such a pity. Lo, these demons. And he knows what's happening to Lo Bing-hei, right? He's like, this tragedy wouldn't have occurred if you truly felt it was pity. And so then he's like, you set this all up. Why did you bring Mobe-jun here when you weren't supposed to? And he's like, well, why would I fear this accusation? And so when Shin Ching-cho says airplane shooting towards the sky, I think Shin Ching-cho had imagined that the character was maybe privy to the system and maybe the character was in fact like another reader, like Shin Qingqiu, but I don't think Shin Qingqiu had guessed that it was the author. He's like, he wanted to study Shang Qinghua's reaction to determine if he had also read the story, but he wasn't just a reader, he was the author. And I was like, oh my God. And he realized that when Shang Qinghua had a reaction to Mobei-jun. So he had been thinking about it. He was the mastermind of the events, but nothing had fallen in the way that it was supposed to. Yep, he'd failed to do this intentionally to bring a hindrance to the plot, so it all made sense. And I love that Shin Qingqiu just has this outburst and just goes to town waylaying him with all of his complaints about the story. And Shang Qinghua's like, well, I'm also a victim here. He's like, I'm still the author. I love that MXTX is making a character of the story an author insert to kind of like make us more sympathetic towards the author, which she is also the author. So it's just bonkers. It's wild. I love it. It's wild. I could not have predicted this in 1,000 years. If you had told me at the beginning of the story that the author was going to be transmigrated into the world, would not have believed you. Would have been like, that's funny. Like, the most shocking MXTX twist so far in all of her novels is the author of the novel being transmigrated into it. I can't. He's like, I tried to plug in a cord, got electrocuted, and the system assigns me a character at random, and I end up as cannon fodder. And Shin Qingqiu is trying to be like, well, at least after you're exposed, he just kills you. I end up getting carved by the person you created. And Shang Qinghua is like, well, you just transported here right upon, you know, like, you are already a great master, right? You didn't have to work for it. Oh my God. And then Shang Qinghua being like, I've actually met a reader. Somebody that's read my stories. So then we find Shin Qingqiu's handle, Shin Yan's handle, is Peerless Cucumber. The pickle jar. He ends up being a pickle jar in the donghua. Cucumbers end up being pickles when you add too much salt and brine and vinegar. He ends up being a pickle if he's around too much bitterness. Also, I'm like, if Shin Qingqiu is a cucumber, I'm just saying, is Lo Binghe an eggplant? I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. Just gonna casually slide that under your radar. Make you think. Like, are we comparing? Are we gonna say that Gong Yi Xiao is like a squash? What are we doing? Peerless cucumber bro. The fact that Shang Qinghua, which is Great Master Airplane, is calling him cucumber bro, insanely hilarious. I love it. I love cucumber bro. And he's like, well, if I vaguely remember, you were the one telling me I should castrate the villains. So it was when the original Shin Qingqiu wanted to do to Ning Ying Ying. So basically, Great Master Airplane is saying that he originally had Shin Qingqiu want to maybe violate Ning Ying Ying, which I could see where Shin Qingqiu was coming from with wanting to castrate the villain. But Shin Qingqiu is like, you know, I refuse to believe you only remember one thing, but we're not dwelling on the past. We're now here. So I have an idea and it can solve our problem. So I don't know what he's planning to do with these mushrooms. I have no clue. The mushrooms, the sun, moon, dew mushrooms, which again, the naming in this story, blah, blah, she sells seashells by the seashore. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Red leather, yellow leather. I feel like I'm going to need to do mouth exercises now before I start reading this story. I'm going to have to start doing some mouth warm-ups to prepare for the tongue twister of names. So, Shin Qingqiu's like, we need a guaranteed fix and we have to keep it a secret. And I like that Qinghua's like, there's lots of plants. Bingege has eaten at least 80, if not 100 plants. And he's like, so you know too. And then he says 4 spoken words, which is sun, moon, dew, mushroom. And I'm assuming that's what he was saying, right? So they leave out tomorrow. Now, Qinghua at first is like, why are we leaving tomorrow? Like, that seems rather sudden. And he's like, you can take your time remembering where this mushroom's located until Lo Binghe murders his way back with Mobei-jun under his command, which is apparently going to happen probably a lot sooner than later since he's already been introduced into the story. He's like, then he's going to kill you. He's going to kill me. But yeah, we can wait. And he's like, nope, I'll get on it. And so I like that they just take a map and a carriage and a sword and they just go on their way. And I also like that Shang Qinghua, who's the author of this story, is moaning and groaning the entire time. And I'm like, I was waiting for Shin Qingqiu to be like, you wrote these stupid carriages into the story. This is your problem. Why did you do this? Right? And so he's like, well, why am I the one paying for all the food and lodging? And he's like, well, the funds are communal. You're just borrowing somebody else's money. So I shouldn't feel that bad. And you shouldn't feel bad either. Oh my God. I love that Shang Qinghua remembered what our friendly dare officer, Yu Qingyan, said to him, being like, he's frail, watch over him. And he's like, honestly though, since this whole thing with the Great Immortal Alliance conference has happened, since this has all taken place, it seems like Shin Qingqiu hasn't had like a relapse of his poison acting up. So I don't know if it's just like supposed to be kind of a parody of that plot point being forgotten until the moment it needs to come up again. But it's not brought up again right now. So maybe off screen Liu Qingge helped him. We don't know, right? So I like that the author is mad because he says everybody here is treating him like a nanny. And who wouldn't understand how the original Shang Qinghua's desire to climb the ranks made him all too sympathetic? I'm like, oh. So then we have the idea of this monster that nobody knows about. So we have the Snake Man. The Snake Man that seems like a glitch in the system. What is it? It is guarding the Sun Moon Dew mushroom. And seems to, we'll talk about the burning eyes when we get to it at the very end, right? But that ties to the idea of Shin Qingqiu sparing the monster. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit because there's some options with that. There's some options. I'm a little bit concerned about those options, but there are options. So we're gonna tie back to that. So yeah, it does sound eerie, the idea of these monsters just coming out of nowhere. And as they're going through, being like, I like the idea that they were saying, should we sprinkle male virgin's pee into the horse's eye? And Shin Qingqiu's like, those horses have some dignity. like, are we really going to do that? And then he says, where am I supposed to find a male virgin's pee? And Shang Qinghua's like, now, this part here, he's like, well, why are you looking at me? He's like, well, as for my former self, let's not talk about that for now, which means he probably is a virgin in real life. But he's like, you wrote Shin Qingqiu's original character yourself. He was unsullied, without degenerate within. He was burning with lust. He had an affair in his youth and sought prostitutes in his adult. He's like, do you think that this character standing before you is a virgin? I got into his body like this. And then he's like, and don't point at yourself. You were written the same way. So now, to be fair though, Shang Qinghua, they did establish, the author did, that he was in that body as an infant. So unless our author has been messing around with people in off time, you know, as they were growing up throughout the novel, maybe they are a virgin too, and they could use that. But anyway, what ends up happening is that Gong Yi Zhao comes around and offers to come with them, and they realize they're actually in the Huanhua territory. So then Shin Qingqiu tries to get a hold of the system, right? Tries to get hold of the system. The system is now in hibernation mode. So we now have badass points and heartbreak points, and the system is shut down. It was disconnected from its power source, which is Liu Binghe. Now, is the system being disconnected from Liu Binghe and being offline and under maintenance and being reconnected, is that a tie and a subtle jab at the fact that Shin Qingqiu is connected to Liu Binghe and can't go on without him? Maybe, possibly. But right now the system is undergoing maintenance. We can only hope that this maintenance will be a good thing and that it's updating itself. It's doing an update and then it will reactivate once it is reconnected. So basically, I feel like when Liu Binghe meets back up again with Shin Qingqiu, that's when the system's going to come back online. The question is the system going to come back online in a way that is going to help Shin-Ching Cho? It is called the self-saving system. Or is it going to make his life more miserable? Who knows? But yeah, Shin-Ching Cho's like, I have more questions, but the AI assistant is only saying things over and over again. And the connection to AI assistants is so funny, especially in our current times, right? And he's like, will the new version just straight up kill him? But he's like, no, wait, the main point was to save him. And he's like, Lo Binghe is my central power source. What? So that's the thing. We don't know if the system update is going to go back to trying to, get rid of him in the end, like in the OG story. We don't know if it's going to try to save him. We don't know what's going to happen. The system hibernating, all of it is going to keep us in the dark until volume 2. And probably until volume 3. We don't know when Lo Binghe is coming back. I assume it's going to be sooner rather than later, but we don't know. I can see where the kiln might have been inspired by all of this, right? There, in both Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing, there is this idea of like a kiln and about one of the main characters of the couple coming back. Here's the thing, and I'm going to do Modao Zushi spoilers here for a hot second. I'm going to wave my hand so I know where to place the spoiler warning. With Modao Zushi, what I was going to say earlier was in that series, Wei Wuxian, who is the protagonist, and you have Lo Binghe, who's the protagonist, they both fall into an abyss, right? In this case, we kind of follow the story from Wei Wuxian's perspective, just like we're following it from Shin-Ching Cho's perspective. So it is a little different in that regard. But in Modao Zushi, Wei Wuxian comes back as the Yiling patriarch, and he's kind of badass. He doesn't want to listen. And at first, he's very much against Long Wangji. He's just like, I'm not listening to you anymore. I'm doing my own thing now. We're not together. And it was a really tragic part of that story. And I was like, no. But then later on, events happen and Wei Wuxian gets reborn. And he ends up, realizing what happened and kind of the errors of his ways and ends up working with Lan Wangji. Now, the entire time all of this is going on with Lan Wangji's character is still in love with Wei Wuxian. So I'm curious in relation to that and I guess this is the end of those spoilers, I'm curious in relation to that, if Lo Binghe is going to come out as this demon, go after Shin-Ching Cho, but then something is going to happen and he's going to realize there was a misunderstanding and that Shin-Ching Cho doesn't hate him and that he likes him, and then they're going to be able to work together. Because I feel like, this isn't really spoilery, but I feel like Shin-Ching Cho and Lan Wangji are kind of in the same boat of having this constant feeling of care towards the other half of their partnership. And that is a similarity between the two stories. So, but I don't know. This is the first story. It's the one that inspired the others, not the other way around. So we don't know. But I like that he gets mad at the AI assistant. He's like, what AI assistant is this? You're not helpful at all. But Shang Qinghua, we don't even know what his system is, but it's down too. I do agree with Shin-Ching Cho when he says that the one good thing about all of this is that he can't get B points because the system's under maintenance, but he can't lose any either. He's kind of in no man's land too. He's kind of just walking around in limbo right now being like, well, I guess I'm just in out of character, adventure mode where I'm just wandering around gathering things. The plot's kind of been put on hold for the moment. It feels like the plot's been put on hold so that Shin-Ching Cho can walk around and gather more materials and get everything up to the speed that he wants before things go down, right? Oh my God. Crazy talk. So then Gong Yizhao shows up. We find out that they were in Huan Hua's territory and that he wants to help them figure out what to do. And he's like, why are you guys here? And of course, they don't want to tell him. They don't want to tell him that they're gathering up this mushroom for reasons. And we find out later that the villains are eventually going to come and get the mushrooms anyway. So they're like, if we don't get the mushrooms now, the villains are going to get the mushrooms. And whatever they end up doing with these mushrooms, they're like, we'd rather have them than the villains having them. So that's why we're getting them now. And I like the I like the idea that Shin Ching-cho is like, this is one mushroom that Lo Bing-hei is not going to eat. It's not going to affect him. It's going to affect other characters. So we're going to take them for ourselves. Now, the repercussions of that, we have no idea what chain of events that's going to set off. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I definitely love the idea of Gong Yi Zhao helping them. And he's kind of like, he's a little bit like Lo Bing-hei. And I feel like, Shin Ching-cho, he realizes with Gong Yi Zhao that he looks a lot like Lo Bing-hei. He's kind and asks about him and polite about him. And he says it's horribly difficult to not be reminded of Lo Bing-hei, his unblackened, lovable disciple, and have a favorable impression. Like, he's basically, Gong Yi Zhao is what Lo Bing-hei is without all that corruption. The problem is he's not in sync with Shin Ching-cho at all. He's nice, he's kind and considerate. He's a lot like Lo Bing-hei, but him and Shin Ching-cho don't have that chemistry that Lo Bing-hei had with him previously. So I was starting to get a little worried for a second. I was like, is he going to develop a relationship with Gong Yi Zhao, and then Lo Bing-hei is going to get super jealous and kill Gong Ji Yao, which could still happen. But I don't think that's going to be the case, because they established in chapter 30 that Shin Ching-cho and him, they're not compatible. It's just like, he's a reminder of Lo Bing-hei and what he once was, but he's not a replacement for him. So then they go into this cave, and I'll be honest, the cave scene where it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and closer and closer and closer, there was a lot about chapter 30 that reminded me of Heaven Official's Blessing. And that's all I'll say without spoiling it, but I was feeling a lot of comparisons to Heaven Official's Blessing, to multiple chapters in Heaven Official's Blessing, than I was to this. So I could definitely see where MXTX was inspired by. Honestly, the part where Shin Ching-cho was like, quit pinching me, Shang. And then Shang was like, I'm back here. That part was terrifying. I was like, oh, there's something there. And I was like, I'm easily scared. So I was like, oh, I'm glad it's the middle of the day. If I was reading this at night, I'd be like, all lights are on, right? Oh my God. And the idea, I love the world building with the idea that the Snake Man is a character that is not, he doesn't like light, whether it's moonlight or sunlight, and they use that smartly to take care of him. But we're going to establish here just shortly that they get to the middle, and there's some Modao Zushi references too. Like when they get into the cave with the lake at the center and the little beam of light pouring down where the mushrooms are, that was reminding me of Turtle Cave. I was having Turtle Cave flashbacks. That's all I'll say, but I was having Turtle Cave flashbacks that whole time. And I was like, what are we going to do? So this one chapter influenced Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing so much. And I'm like, oh, I love it. I see where it's coming from. And this chapter was really, really good. I like chapter 30 a lot. That they get to the very end, they find I love the idea of the dew collecting in the little moat around the soil and it just being like pure and fresh, and then they muck it up. Then they ruin it. Of course, it's like, I watched a video about deep sea mining a few weeks ago, and it terrified me. And it's this idea of like just going to the bottom of our ocean and collecting these things that are going to be helpful. I felt like Shin Ching-cho and Shang Qinghua were like these deep sea miners that were like, well, we're just gathering this up, don't mind us. But then the problem is, in them gathering it up, they're ruining the ecosystem of that environment, and they don't know the impact of what they're doing. And that's so true to life now with this whole deep sea mining thing. I'm like, oh no. But he says that, how did it, and Gong Yi Zhao is trying to figure out why they're gathering this mushroom. Like, what's the point of it? They're like, what's the big deal? And so then Shin Ching-cho, he's hesitated. He sees these dozen or so white mushrooms, and he's like, they're a natural wonder. He's like, it seems a bit immoral to take all of them, but if he doesn't pick them all now, another villain's going to pick them up later, which would also be even more immoral. So if they messed up and destroyed one, they need some backups. So they needed the insurance, just to be absolutely safe. But the Snake Man kept one back. He kept a sprout back from there. And so they managed to get the pale monster man. I love the idea of using the talismans underwater to blow it up. And like, it's like shooting fish out of a barrel, right? And they shoot the fish, the Snake Man up onto the shore. But then they're like, they don't know what it is. They're like, it has a head full of long hair, but it's just cartilage. And it just feels like this half-formed creature that is just a bloated monster. And I'm like, I don't know if this monster is supposed to be like the remnants of like fanfic or like somebody's rendition of a character, or if like certain elements are like merging into these creatures, like what's happening. And Gong Yi Zhao is going to kill the monster when he's like, no. Shin Qingqiu's like, oh, don't do that. He's like, wait. He's like, you said before, the common people within several kilometer radius of Bailu Forest have never suffered any demon attacks. He's like, this creature has not done anything malicious. There's no reason to exterminate it. All he's ever done is drink the water. We're the ones who intruded and disturbed it. And so Gong Yi Zhao is like, okay, fine. I won't do anything. But, I mean, you're right. I don't have a reason to. But then he says, he's like, he never would have guessed that his interest in such a strange creature was equivalent to the average Zongdian reader's interest in the 100 flower like maidens, even one even more beautiful than the last. I'm like, look, I don't want to bring up this whole monster fucker theory, but I'm like, there are several ways to look at this last paragraph of this point here, where it shows the monster like the snake man strenuously struggling on the ground and had stopped writhing and was instead shivering. And he says, pressed to his deformed body is a tiny, thin sun, moon, dew mushroom sprout. And in that pair of incongruously bright eyes, a raging fire began to burn. So I'm like, is that raging fire going to be the monster's determination to kill Shin Qingqiu and get revenge for him? That part kind of makes sense because they did like wreck his whole home and everything, but he has the sprout that he can regrow. And I mean, he is a monster, so maybe he is going to try to take revenge on Shin Qingqiu, but they just saved him and Shin Qingqiu spared his life, so I don't think so. Or because Shin Qingqiu appreciates these monsters and has value in them and is sparing them, is Shin Qingqiu unwillingly starting his own monster harem? I'm just saying! Are these monsters slowly but surely, Shin Qingqiu is going to spare them, and then they're slowly going to be like the harem following Lo Binghei, and they're slowly going to follow Shin Qingqiu, and then Lo Binghei is going to come in and be like, leave Shizun alone, he's mine, not yours! And it's going to be like this whole thing? I'm just saying it could be it. It could be it. We don't know. 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 So then they hurry up and get out of there. And the only reason they get away is by doing what is unthinkable of the Qi Jing Peak. And he's like, well, Gong Yi Zhao, you can come over and hang out anytime. We just got to get out of here right now. And Gong Yi Zhao is like, you guys never offered host guests, so I guess I will take you up on that offer. So I like the idea of Gong Yi Zhao like coming with them later on. He reminds me of a Heaven Official's Blessing character. He gives me Peisu vibes a little bit. He really does. And I'm kind of all about that. So I'm hoping that he comes back. I hope that he comes back in this. So I also like this part where at one point Shin Qingqiu, he's like, oh, we'll just give it to my disciple Lo Binghei. And then he gets depressed, realizing that he spoke out of turn. And Gong Yi Zhao is like, he seemed to really like him. And he was really depressed. What good friends they were. Gong Yi Zhao is like, they were sure good friends, weren't they? But Shang Qinghua, he's cracked the code. And Shin Qingqiu doesn't want to hear it. But this whole end of chapter 30, where he was like, it's actually true. So it's true. He's like, I've been watching you for a while, and Cucumber Bro, how do you see Lo Binghei? And I was like, give us the tea! Come on, Qinghua! Give us the tea! Yes! Make him say it! Make him admit it! And Shin Qingqiu was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, yeah. He's like, you called his name? He's like, Cucumber Bro, I didn't think you were this sort of person. And he's like, I don't know what out of your mind. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, how do you see Lo Binghei? You were one of his fans. You roasted all these other characters, but you never roasted him. Is he a character? Or is he more than that to you? And it's like, oh! And that's when the chill runs down his back. It's like somebody triggering an awakening in you without you wanting to be awakened. He's like, why is this like a gossipy girl like conversation? And then in his mind, in Shin Chingcho's mind, it's like, oh, do you have a crush on him? What are you talking about? Dodging the question? Oh, I hate you, go to bed. And Sheng Qinghua was in fact innocent. He was just asking and interested in discussing it. But Shin Chingcho is overthinking about the skeletons in his closet that haven't come out yet. And he's like, why aren't we moving? And he's like, we need a driver. Keep going. Oh. Uh-huh. There were still 5 years before Lo Binghe would leave the endless abyss and return to the human realm. If nothing went wrong, the mushrooms they had harvested would definitely be enough to save his life. But he'd forgotten the fundamental stupidity of Proud Immortal Demon Way. If nothing went wrong at a crucial juncture, well, then that meant it wasn't exciting enough. Meaning that shit's not going to go the way that Shin Chingcho has planned. Because, yeah, that makes me wonder if nothing went wrong, well, stuff's going to go wrong. And 5 years, I don't know if it's going to be 5 years. That would put Lo Binghe in his 20s. So, which would be, you know, around the same age as Shin Yan in reality. So, oh my God. I like that Sheng Qinghua was just curious. And Shin Chingcho was like, what, me like him? I have a crush on him? What are you talking about? Which is the case. So it's like, Shin Chingcho is finally being aware that maybe he does, but he doesn't want to talk about it. And Shang Qinghua, I love the concept of Shang Qinghua being the one to make him think about it. And he's being the instigator to make it come out in the open. And I'm like, oh my God. I've never been more excited or more terrified to read a book in my life. I have no clue what's going to happen. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait, y'all. So if I can't wait, I'm sorry. I do want to go back and watch that scene, though. I've talked for over an hour about this moment. Oh, my God. But I do want to go back and talk about this scene with you, the end credits, right? And I've got the closed captions on so we can hopefully see it. But I'm gonna get my screen thing up. Post here. I'm going to turn the sound off for now because I'll go back and listen to it with the sound on, but for copyright reasons, we obviously cannot play it. You know how it goes. But we're going to just bring it up here. It's the last minute. I found this person that like had the scene online, so it's like the last minute of that. So we're going to look at that and see what this after credit scene was. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And I want to see what this is. Oh my God. What is this? What is this? Oh, is that Mo Beijun? Oh, it looks so good. Oh my God. Oh, shit. Oh no. And then that's the system telling him about the mission. Oh, well, he just comes out of nowhere. What? Oh. Oh. Oh my gosh. Is he actually going to stab him? Oh, there's a timer. Make it to where he has to. Oh, oh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh. And then he pushes him off. Oh my God. Oh my God. And that's it, isn't it? Oh my God. In the donghua, they add the timer. Like, you've only got so much time to do it. They don't add the timer in the novel. They also, it felt a lot less violent in the donghua there. Oh, man. I'm glad I didn't watch that right after the episode. Oh, my God. No. Some people were like, oh, you should go ahead and watch the after credit scene. I was like, no, I'm glad I didn't do that. That would have been such a spoiler. No, no way. Oh my God. I know there's a trailer for season 2 out there, but I don't want to watch it because I don't want to watch it until I get to a point in the story where I can go back and watch it. So, I'll probably ask the moderators to just let me know when I get to the point where I can go watch the trailer. And everything's been talked about, but oh my God. We still have things to do. I want to look at the back of this cover. Half-demon Lo Binghe rose from humble beginnings in a tortured past to become unrivaled in strength and beauty. With his dominion over both the human and demon realms and his 100-strong harem, he's truly the most powerful protagonist in a trashy web novel series. At least that's what Shin Yan believes as he finishes reading the final chapter of Proud Immortal Demon Way. But when a bout of rage leads to his sudden death, Shin Yan is reborn into the world of the novel in the body of Shin Qingqiu, the beautiful but cruel teacher of a young Lo Binghe. When Shin Qingqiu may have the incredible power of a cultivator, he is destined to be horrifically punished for crimes against the protagonist. The new Shin Qingqiu now only has one course of action: to get into Lo Binghe's good graces before the young man's rise to power, or suffer the awful fate of a true scum villain. And I like that we get Xia Hualing, we get our dare officer Yu Qingyan, and then we get Liu Qingge on the cover. The interesting thing is they look exactly how I would imagine them in the novel. They look exactly how I like that Yu Qingyan has like the strong big jaw, looks kind of himbo-ish. Liu Qingge looks too pretty for his own good. It's great. Xia Hualing, she looks badass. I love it. So there is a section at the end back here that I wanted to go through real quick with the characters. Oh! Says, the identity of certain characters may be a spoiler. Use this guide with caution on your first read of the novel. I'm assuming they're just talking about volume 1, right? But yeah, like Shin Yan, Shin Qingqiu, surname Shin means wall. Well, he puts up a wall with his character, right? Web handles Peerless Cucumber. Interesting. So yeah, the Proud Immortal Demon Ray's most supportive auntie. Most dedicated anti-fan of the novel. He was baited by its cool monsters and charming protagonist. Oh, he wants to be a monster fucker and he likes Lo Binghe. To read millions and millions of words of the hit stallion novel, though he cussed out the author's sellout tendencies the whole way. And now he's stuck with that sellout. I love it. Yep. And so now things are looking difficult, but Shin Yan's confident he can use the upcoming years to suck up to Lo Binghe. And enough to be spared when the boy begins his quest for revenge. Right? Well, that's what we're hoping for. We're going to see how right we are. Oh my god. Yep. And then I like this. As he was transmigrated, he discovers his glorious quest of thigh hugging is not as easy as he imagined. The line between story and reality begins to blur, and he starts to treat the people in this new world not as characters, but as people. Will his knowledge as a reader of the original novel be enough to stay afloat as his actions divert the plot further and further from its path? Yeah, that's the thing. We don't know where it's going to now. So then we have Lo Binghe, Icy River. He's the White Lotus disciple. His one sword is the Righteous Sun, and Jin Mo, his future sword, is the Heart Demon. Ooh, Heart Demon. Oh, interesting. Interesting. I wonder if that's going to tie with Heartbreak. Okay. And then we have Shin Qingqiu, which is also the Peak Lord. Oh, it's the same thing. Yep, talking about his original form. And then Yu Qingyang, his name meaning clear source and clear autumn. Okay. I'm guessing that's what the Qing means, is clear. Ning Ying means infant. Well, of course. Aw. As the world evolves away from the constraints of the stallion genre, she begins to grow up into a fine young woman who cares deeply for the people around her. Yeah, I like her caring for Shin Qingqiu at the end of this is a good sign of that, right? Mingfan means sail. He'll be eternally left to wonder why the master favorite him suddenly left to shack up with Lo Binghe instead. I mean, you know, what can we do? I mean, is he going to shack up with Lo Binghe? I guess we'll find out, right? He's the older brother of Liu Mingyan, Liu Qingge. He warms up to him in his own standoffish way. Yeah, Liu Qingge has warmed up to Shin Qingqiu as the story has gone on. His name means clear song. Mu Qingfang, is the healer. His name means clear fragrance. Qing Qinggi means clear and lush. Nice. Then we have, what else we got? Liu Mingyan means drizzling mist. I like that. Oh, I like kind of the little mystery here. It says, What other aspirations could she be nursing beneath that pure and chaste exterior? She's supposed to be one of the harem members, but what else could she be doing? And then Sheng Qinghua, whose name means clear and splendid, says overworked and underpaid. What an author name, right? The Peak Lord of Onding Peak takes on a thankless job as the head of the sex housekeeping department. One might wonder, is there a reason he's willing to toil for this dubious honor? Not giving away that it's the author. Oh, I freaking love it, right? I freaking love it. So yeah, then we have Xia Hualing, Splendid Belle. Interesting. And then Mang Mo, the things a teacher will suffer to pass on his techniques. Mo Bei Jun, mean deserted north. His future eccentric sidekick, a proud ice demon turned plot device for Lo Binghei's power-up arc. He looked gorgeous in the donghua, by the way. He looked a lot more effeminate and beautiful in the donghua. I'm not opposed to such looks. I was just like, ooh, I love the white hair and ice blue eyes. Yes, please. Here for it. So then, yeah, we have some, I like that Gong Yi Zhao's name means mugwort. And then Chen Wan Yu and Wan Rong. Okay, then we have the locations in the back here. The locations where I'll probably have to go through this before I start volume 2. I'm going to look at some of these names and titles. They have a pronunciation guide. Some of the pronunciation guide is interesting, though, like Shin Qingqiu and Lua Binghe. Lua Binghe? Is it supposed to be Lua? It's supposed to be Lua, maybe? Lua Binghe. And then Wei Wu Xian. Oh, Wei Wu Xian, yeah. And the one for Shi Lian, Shi Ye Lian. And then I guess that's right. So maybe it is Lua. Lua Binghe? Lua? Is it supposed to be like Lua? All right. And then Don Mei. And then we have a glossary of different terms with that. They have different things about web novels. I'm going to have to read this before volume 2. And then clinging to thighs, similar to riding someone's coattails in English. Well, I like clinging to thighs better. And then we have some of the little things that we've looked at so far about saving face, the 5 elements, incense time, jade. Yeah, he still has the jade relic. Is that going to be of use? He has the binding rope and the jade ornament. So I'm going to need to put up there, like, he has the jade ornament and the binding rope. I want to put that up there. That we still have those 2 artifacts as far as we know. We have the jade necklace and we have the binding rope that might be able to be used in the future that he still has on his person. We can't forget about those. But then we have like the different kinds of flowers, things like that, different things that are explained. And then there's an image gallery. Oh, cute! So you have Shin Ching Cho and Lo Binghe. Lo looks so little. He looks like such a little kid there. Aw. And then we have Yu Qingyong and Liu Qingge. They look great. I love how they're drawn there. Oh my god, Yu Qingyong's sword is like Cloud from Final Fantasy level of massive. That's insane. And then what else we got? Oh, we got Ming Fan and we got Ning Ying Ying. So cute. Ming Fan looks a little bit like Shang Qinghua there. Just a little bit, and that's all we get. Oh, I'm excited. I hope we get more illustrations in volume 2. I hope we get that. So we got the fan for a little symbol up here. I'm going to be curious to see volume 2, how that goes. I have already been given the document to download for volume 2, so we should be good there. But oh my god, y'all. I am so excited for what's to come, and I hope you all are too. So this was a long reaction and discussion, but worth it. We're going to have 8 weeks to talk about volume 2, and it's going to be a fun 8 weeks. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm back next week as we start volume 2 of Scum Villains Self-Saving System. Bye.